Hello and welcome back to Talking TV with my mum, the weekly Geek-Dom TV review show where we talk about programs such as Supergirl, Star Trek, The Walking Dead, The Orville, all of those kind of things. We've been away for a while due to various reasons, technical issues, TV shows being on hiatus, as they say, general other bits and pieces. I had lots of issues at my end. Luckily, they all seem to be sorted now, so hopefully, going forward, we will be able to provide you with a weekly show again, which is what we want to do. So, this week's episode, or well, I say this week's, we're probably going to have two this week, but this first episode is going to be a whistle-stop roundup, just to sort of bring us up to speed with everything that we've missed. We're not going to talk massively in depth about a lot of the shows. We will talk a little bit about certain things because we had the finale of The Walking Dead that we didn't discuss properly, we had the finale of Star Trek Discovery we didn't discuss properly, and the finale of The Orville. So those three things will get a little bit more attention, but everything in the middle is just literally going to be like bullet points, so that when we talk about the next episodes, we'll have sort of caught ourselves up as well. So that's basically going to be the format. Hopefully you'll enjoy this week's show, and then you'll come back and listen to the up-to-date one. Also, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that's been helping out with the channel. We're over 100 subscribers now. I think it's 112 at the time of recording, so that's a brilliant benchmark. I'm really happy about that. If you can carry on helping to grow this community and help grow this kingdom of geeks, then please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Also leave likes on the podcast because that really helps us out, and comments too because we like hearing from you. In the description box you can find a link to my Twitter, so if you want to come and chat to me and follow me on there, then feel free to do that. And also, if you want to help support this podcast and this channel in general, the links are there for my different donation methods, Patreon and Ko-fi. Whatever you can do, no pressure if you can't, but it's just something I have to mention. So yeah, that's all the housekeeping. So we are going to get underway, and hopefully this won't turn out to be too much of a mammoth podcast. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my co-host. So hello there, Mum. Welcome back.
Yeah, hello. Been a long time. Nearly 2 months.
I know, it's crazy.
Although we have been trying in between this now and then.
Yes.
Now, then and now, but we gave up because we thought it's not worth it if we're not going to be able to give a good show. So we thought we'd wait till we got the equipment sorted, didn't we? So
yes.
Hence why we got lots to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks to my friend Rob, who himself has a YouTube channel. It's Robert James, where he does things like Overwatch and stuff. But yeah, give a shout out to him because he helped out a lot here with our sort of technical issues and sorting out computers and things for me. So I have to show him a bit of recognition. But yeah, now we've got this, it means that we can do this back on a regular schedule again, which is good.
Yep. Yeah, I've been lost without my pods.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had comments about it, people asking, are you ever doing it again, or when's it coming back, or whatever, and it's like, well, it's not a case of not wanting to, that's the thing,
Yeah.
we're both eager to do it, it's just...
Well, my boss is scheduling my Fridays in so I can do it. I go, I don't need to do it today because we can't do it. So
yeah.
yeah, back on track.
Oh dear. Okay, well let's get underway then,
Let's get
shall
cracking.
we? So we're going to start with the finale of The Walking Dead, which was called The Storm. So if you'll recall, the previous episode was called The Calm Before. This was a bit of an odd episode because normally The Walking Dead does some big high stakes thing. There's normally a character death. There's normally like a cliffhanger, something like that, to keep you on tenterhooks. This one sort of threw the format out the window a little bit, didn't it? Because it was kind of it was, continued everything that had been going on, but it was also a little bit of a self-contained story. It was a few months after the events of the previous episode, so after the big, massacre and stuff, and winter had arrived, and we finally got to see winter in the world of The Walking Dead and how they deal with that. Funnily enough, after there being some time passing, I don't know about you, Mum, on this, but, what I found a bit weird was some of their reactions as if, they'd never experienced zombies in the snow before, and you think, well, this show's been going now for years, so they've clearly had winters, we just haven't seen them, but They were kind of
It was
acting as if they've never experienced it before.
yeah, they actually they made it a bit obvious that they'd never recorded a winter scene
Yeah.
in a way, didn't it?
So that was a
Because I
bit
was sure
weird.
they've had bad weather before, but
Hmm.
yeah,
But there
maybe
we
not.
go. But yeah, we kicked off with the kingdom, and we saw that things are just not really good there. Everything was failing, pipes bursting, and various electrical things shorting out, and the weather was just really affecting them. And Ezekiel just decided, we can't stay here anymore. So they shipped out. They just decided to leave, didn't they?
Mm.
And they were just like, yep, that's it. And they locked up the kingdom. And, hopefully they will return there at some point in the future. But for the time being, the kingdom has been closed down. So they all headed out into the snow to trek on into, wherever they were going to go next. We also had this weird thing at the beginning where Ezekiel was on like a CB
Yeah, he
radio.
was doing some sort of voiceover piece,
Yeah,
wasn't it, when he was talking to somebody?
but we didn't
We
know who
couldn't
he was
work out if
talking
he'd
to.
sent it before he left or whether it was later on in the episode at the time.
Yeah.
It
And
was
it was,
difficult. Yeah, because obviously he was saying all this stuff. We was thinking, what's happened? And then we go, oh, they've decided to leave. But then later on we find out that happened later rather than before, if you know what I
yeah.
mean.
We then got the escort, so you had Daryl, Michonne, the girl, what's her name with the bow, Yumiko, and they were, escorting them. They talked about things going on at the hilltop, since obviously now we've had Tara die, so, we've
Still
got...
no news of Maggie either, was there?
No, although they tried reaching out to her, they tried sort of getting in contact with her and stuff, but as of yet there was nothing. Then we had a little bit of action on the road, didn't we? There was some, because there was a weird bit there where they were all walking along the path, and then you had walkers sort of in the distance, and then it
Yeah,
was
they
like,
weren't
well,
sure, were they?
are they walkers or are they whisperers?
Yeah,
Like, are they tracking us? So they were a bit wary.
yeah.
But then there were some walkers about that they dealt with, and then there was that moment with Daryl, because didn't Daryl and Ezekiel break away to deal with some of the walkers, and then once they'd done that, they had a chat.
Yeah, he told him to back off with Carol, saying, "Oh, I know, can see you two are getting friendly or something."
Yeah.
But she's the love of my life, basically.
Mhm.
Daryl just looked at him and just said, "Yeah, whatever."
Yeah.
It's like I ain't get take no crap from you. He didn't say that, but
I
But
mean,
yeah, so
I felt really felt for Ezekiel in this episode. I mean, we'll discuss this more as we get further into it, but I did really feel for him in terms of everything that's happened and everything that he's going through. And yeah, like you said, because of that bond between Daryl and Carol, it's kind of like you need to back off a little bit, man, because if you're around, how are we supposed to deal with things as a couple?
yeah, because obviously at the beginning, if you remember, they before they left, they showed Carol opening a box. It was all the memories of Henry, and she was
Yeah.
really sad. And then you saw him scrolling up the treaty and basically all the life that they had built up.
Mhm.
So Carol, I think, is now thinking, well, that's that now.
Yeah, that
And
life
the
is
king
finished.
knows she's thinking that, so he's thinking Daryl's gonna she's gonna go back towards the way she was.
Mhm.
So he's thinking if she hasn't got his influence, maybe there's a future still for them. Basically, I think that's what it was all about, wasn't it?
Yeah. We also we had the bit, because they'd been talking a bit about Lydia and about Lydia's place in the group, and Carol's a bit frosty towards her and things like that. And then she wandered off, into the
Mm.
woods. And then there was a moment then that confused me, because she sort of wandered through the woods and she came to, I think it was like a frozen pond or something.
Yeah,
And
there's
there
a
was
walker in
a
it. Yeah,
walker, and I thought the walker was somebody, like it was someone she recognized, like part of that old community. Because initially I
yeah,
was like, why is she so intrigued by this? What is like someone she knew? But no, then it turned out I think she was just not dealing, I suppose, with everything that had happened, and she was going to try and get the walker to bite her.
yeah. So
Mm,
she's like taunting it, wasn't she?
yeah,
And I was thinking, what's she doing? And then luckily, Carol had obviously wandered off the path and found her.
yeah.
It's like, what are you doing?
And it's
Like,
interesting, again, it's one of those things that at the time, because I mean, you and I have kind of talked about this episode a bit, sort of when we tried
yeah,
recording previously, but like since then, obviously I've read things and saw things, and there was something that I read somewhere, and it didn't dawn on me at the time, but then I thought, actually, yeah, that's a good point. They're saying about like how this scene was kind of paralleled with some of the other scenes with Carol and children in the past. So,
well, yeah,
having Carol that time with the two little girls that time where
yeah, yeah,
the flowers and all that, keep looking at the flowers and all this stuff, and it was almost like
mm,
there were echoes of that scene, but not sort of like a replica of it. It wasn't like an immediate callback, but it was like, oh, here's another scene with Carol and with a young person, and it's like, what does because you think, well, is Carol going to do what she did to that other girl, and go, oh, it's better to put her down, for everyone's sake. Was she going to do that with Lydia? But obviously she instead brought her back to the group.
yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because wasn't that the bit where they went in the shed? They went in somewhere, or was that another time? That was a previous episode that she'd wandered off.
No, that was
And
later on. That was the same. That
that
was
was in the same episode,
yeah.
wasn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
But then we joined back with the main group, and where they were on the road, they were like, look, this storm's getting heavy. We can't be out on the road too long. We need to find somewhere to rest up. And it turned out they were in the vicinity of the sanctuary.
Yeah, the
So
old
it's like,
sanctuary.
oh, that's interesting. We're revisiting an old location. So they holed up in there, and, there was a few little quips about the place and how run down it was, and people used to actually live here and things like that. And they were trying to decide, look, what are we going to do now then? Where do we go? How do we get to where we need to go? Because they said about the bridge, didn't they? They said if Rick's bridge was still standing, we'd be okay. And then they're like, yeah, but the river's going to be frozen, so we can cross like that, but we're going to have to cross into the Whisperers' territory in order to get across to there.
That's right, yeah.
And they were, there was debates, why should we be doing this? And it's like, well, we don't really have much choice, because if we go the long way round, we might not make it. So we've got to make a hard decision. And I know we've had this warning and stuff, but, hopefully in the cover of this snow and things, they won't realise, they won't know we're passing through there. And,
That was good, exciting, because obviously this is the first time they've gone into that territory, hasn't it? It looks like, since she had warned them off.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously as they were going towards it, they could see walkers. Again, similar to earlier on.
Yeah.
They weren't sure, are they them or they're not them?
Yeah, because you had that creepy moment, didn't you, where they were going through it, and obviously because it was heavy snow, it was kind of like foggy and misty, and they couldn't really see. And you start seeing these shapes, and it's like, oh my god, like, are they waiting for them? And then it's like, oh no, actually they're frozen.
Yeah, they chopped them out and went, oh, they're not there.
Yeah.
And then they also had to get people across a lake.
Yeah.
So they was like, go get, and I think, was it one point, somebody, I think it was Ezekiel said, so like, no, I can't do this, can't risk them.
Yeah.
And they're like, so we've got no choice, we have to get them across slowly and carefully. And while they were doing that, Michonne and that were killing off the ones that are coming out of the snow.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that was the bit.
Enable it. That was horrible.
I know. They just started, like, snowbanks just started bursting open, and walkers started crawling out and grabbing at people's ankles and stuff. Yeah, that was really good. It was cool, actually, seeing that. Because it's something we haven't seen before, it's always nice when they find a new inventive thing to do on The Walking Dead. Because, on paper you go, well, how many things can you do with zombies? But yet they keep coming up with new and interesting things to do with them, so...
Yeah.
And that was also, throwing back to what you said previously, that was the point where Lydia disappeared again.
Wandered off again, yeah.
And Carol realised she'd gone, and so she... I presume it was because of what had happened previously. She's thinking, oh no, she's gone off again, she's going to go and try and kill herself again. So she went looking for her, and then they had the moment... like the talkie moment, and she was basically like, I don't belong here, this is all my fault, I'm to blame, I can't stay with you, I can't go back to them, so I should die, I need to die. And she wanted Carol to kill her, but Carol...
Well, she thought Carol was going to kill her because of the Henry thing.
Yeah, and Carol sort of...
I had a moment, she sort of looked to me and thought, oh, Carol, please, don't do it.
But she looked like she was thinking about it, didn't she, for a moment? But then she decided not to, and she was like, no, you're not you know, you're not to blame, and you know, you're not weak and stuff, and you know, we'll get through this together, kind of thing. So she shepherded her back to the others. So then they got through that treacherous area, and they led on to Hilltop, because where they were like quite close to Hilltop. And then we had like a drop off. It was basically like some people stayed at Hilltop, and a few of the others said, like, we're going on to Alexandria. And one of the people that stayed at the Hilltop was Ezekiel.
And Carol went to Alexandria, didn't she?
Yeah, and it looked like that's the end of them. That's them finished. She was going to give him the ring back, wasn't she? But he said that he told her to keep hold of it. And yeah, that was quite sad. It was like, oh, and then they left.
But
and basically,
also
it looked
in
like
between...
Ezekiel's in charge of the Hilltop now. So
yeah,
I imagine. But yeah, so that was that section.
In between all of this happening, because obviously we just got that section down together.
Yeah.
We had the snow was starting at Alexandria, and they were trying to get the heating sorted.
Mm-hmm.
And so Eugene suggested they adopt a Winter 1 ice control protocol.
Yeah.
And they were going, well, what about Negan? And they said, well, he's got to come out of his cell or he'll freeze.
Yeah.
So they brought him out. And he was being so funny, wasn't he, Negan?
Well,
the love triangle.
Yeah, he was being his usual Negan self, wasn't he? Picking up on the thing in the room, you know, the awkwardness.
Yeah,
of, like...
the love triangle being just like Christmas, the baby daddy stuff.
Yeah.
It's very fun. So funny.
And sort of implying that, like, well, you know, if they want to keep warm and stuff, maybe they can all get a bit freaky together and, you know, sort of thing. And lots of suggestive comments and things like that.
Gabriel put him right, goes, father, not the father.
Yeah.
No, father. But yeah, so they decided that the fireplace was, something was happening. It was like fumes coming from it. Yeah, it was blocked, so there was like fumes coming into the room.
Yeah.
So they decided they have to head to Aaron's house.
Yeah, that's right. You also had a little moment, which then becomes more important later, where Judith kept looking out the window. She was told a few times, you know, come away from there and stuff like that, and she was like,
Dog was out in the snow.
Yeah, I've lost Dog. Daryl left me in charge of Dog, and I've lost Dog. I need to find him. It's really important. And they're like, well, you know, we can't do anything about it right now. And you had Negan was sort of looking at her. Didn't she swear or something? And he told her off.
Yeah. He told her off for swearing, Miss Grimes. Yeah. But they decided they were all going to get all tied up together and all walk out, and they were going to leave Negan there.
Yep.
I was like, you got me out of the cell because I'm freezing, but you're just going to leave me here now.
Yep.
But no, they didn't. They got him in, and they were all like trudging across to Aaron's house. And Judith heard the dog again, didn't she?
Mm-hmm.
And she rushed off into the snow. And who went to her rescue? Negan.
Exactly. What was funny was everybody was going, Judith, Judith. They're all shouting, but nobody broke away except for Negan. The villain, the bad guy, the one that doesn't care about anybody, is the one that decided, no, I can't let this little girl go off on her own. All the rest of this group, you know, none of them thought about doing that. They all just stood there and shouted. So that was quite a telling moment, really. And he went after her, but he got hit by something, didn't he?
Flying debris.
Yeah.
There's something like because of the wind, something hit him.
Yeah.
And cut his leg or something.
That's right, but
he still managed to find. Yeah, he got towards her. Yeah. And he said something about the dog being like stupid dog.
Yeah. And then he found Judith, and he like.
They had a little chat, didn't they? They looked heart to heart.
Yeah, because he was like, you know, you saved me or whatever, and I can't remember what he said now because obviously it was a while ago, but he was quite tender with her, and then. He's so funny because he goes from that moment where he lets his guard down and he's a little bit sensitive and stuff, and then he made some kind of wisecrack. Didn't he swear? And then
yeah, she told him off. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like a reverse of the earlier on scenario.
He said something about the dog, didn't he? He said he was swearing at the dog.
Yeah.
And she's like, "That's not way to speak" or something. Like she told him off that time before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was nice, little moment with the two of them.
And then he sort of scooped her up and then got the dog and then found his way back through the snow to the others.
Yeah.
Then that was then the point where it then skipped again and it got back to, because then that was the end of that, wasn't it? They got back together and they obviously must have made it to Aaron's house. and then we got to see Daryl and the others reaching
Set it up, yeah.
Alexandria.
Yeah. And they had a snow fight.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Judith and the little boy, and what's his name? Is it RJ, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Michonne, yeah.
Yeah.
They had a bit of a snow fight. And then Michonne went inside and found Negan in bed again
Yes, that's right.
with his injured leg, but no handcuffs this time.
And she was grateful for what he had done, and he was kind of said to her about she had some balls to cross through the Whisperer territory, and that don't know if that was a wise move or whether that's going to sort of come back to haunt you, kind of thing. But you got the cojones to actually do that, and she was like, well, it was a case of having to, and we'll deal with whatever ramifications come afterwards, sort of thing.
Yeah. Wasn't there a mention of the Alpha in that conversation?
Possibly. Yeah, something might have been said about her, but I can't remember specifically. Then, talking about the Wisp, because obviously at this point now, by the time they reach Alexandria and stuff, then I don't know if it was days later, but the snow had settled everywhere, but the actual blizzardy conditions had actually ended, and we got the Whisperers, and they'd obviously migrated. They'd migrated south.
Yeah, I can't believe that. They were so worried about coming across them.
Yeah.
In the meantime, they'd gone south or whatever to the better weather.
Yeah.
Took the horde of zombies with them.
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously that's what they were worried about.
Yeah.
And they'd been gone all this time.
Yeah.
And then she decided to get Beta, was it? To beat her? Beta. Just beat her. Just beat her. Bit Michael Jackson. And then she said about it's been a long. What did you say? This is they don't know what they're gonna come up against or something.
I think she was like she needed to be strong for what's to come.
What's to come?
Yeah. And it was like, what does she mean by that? And then that's why she got him to. And it was interesting because it was a callback to that. When they had Lydia in the prison cell, and Daryl spoke to her and said about the worst thing more than a belt or a shoe or whatever is being whipped with a birch. What should they call it? A
twig.
What's the thing they call it? It's a stitch, a
birch
switch.
whip.
But there's a thing, isn't there? Like Americans say, like about hitting with a stitch or a switch or something like that, which is basically this branch. It's a branch that's been stripped down and then used as like a whip. And that's what, she put her arms out and he was whipping her with it, and she was like trying to sort of not react or flinch because she has to be stronger. So it's like, well, what are they plotting? And then does that make you realise that, oh, they might have been away, but I think they knew that they crossed over into their territory.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way logically I can think of is if they went out scavenging and stuff after they got back and they found all the dead.
Yeah, they probably
did.
They probably would have done and said, well, because they were maybe waiting to see if they found them.
Yeah.
Stuck somewhere, so their problem was over.
Mm-hmm.
But because they had obviously got through, and there was none of their lot dead anywhere, she realised that now plan B.
Yeah.
Or the next stage of her wicked plan has to come into because they've actually breached her thing, she said.
Yeah.
Because they did go across there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they thought, right, we've got to get to. They've actually got away through the boundary. She's obviously mad, isn't she? Thinking, now they've disobeyed me. Because she said, I'll spare you all as long as you don't go across the boundary.
Yeah. Now
they have. She's got to think, right, they've got to have the repercussions of it, haven't they?
Yeah,
it's
indeed.
like,
So then we get we go back to the point that the episode began with Ezekiel on the radio. And it turns out that he's talking to Judith.
Yes.
And so then I got the feeling, like, in my mind, I felt that this whole episode, what we had been watching was he was telling her the story almost. So it's almost like he was talking to Judith about the journey, like about what happened.
Yeah, the journey from when they left the kingdom on to where,
So that was quite interesting. And then she said, well, look, I've got to go now because I've got homework to do and stuff like that, but we'll speak again soon. And that they're still family and, they've just got a new home now and stuff. That was quite a sweet little moment with her sort of saying, we still care about you kind of thing.
Yeah, we haven't given up on you.
And then she left, and then he left, but he didn't turn the radio off. And then
No.
it sort of panned in slowly onto the radio, and then you heard crackling, and then a voice came through the radio asking if there was anybody there. And it was a woman's voice, but it was hard to make out the voice, wasn't it?
Yes, so was that Maggie? Was it that woman that took Rick? It's like, oh, was it? Or Georgia?
Yeah, or somebody completely new.
Somebody completely different, yes. So it's like, who was it? What a way to end it.
So although we didn't get our traditional big cliffhangery moment, they did leave us with a bit of a cliffhanger as to who's on the other end of the radio, sort of thing. And also little tidbits, we know something is going to happen in the next season in regards to the Whisperers, because this season just seemed to act as though, although we had some gory, scary moments, in a way it was like this was just our introduction to this group of, of enemies.
Yeah. They've done it slightly different, haven't they? It's almost like they've made the final episode more like, well, obviously the episode before, the penultimate, was like a finale.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they've done it now, ending how it's done, it's more like that episode's a penultimate, even though it's going to be a brand new season.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I do indeed.
It's like, can't wait. We've got to wait a long time, so no.
Yes, we've got to wait.
Well, we have Fear
October.
the Walking Dead back next month, so
yes, we do.
We'll see what they throw up, and there's got a few. I think there's a few surprises on that one, so we have to wait and see.
Well, I'm hoping, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the thing that we didn't get last season, which I kept hoping for, and I kept saying to you, maybe this week we'll get it, maybe this week we'll get it. I'm hoping that Daniel Salazar will return, because I did hear that obviously he's still attached to the show, so I'm looking forward to seeing him show up. And also we've got the other crossing over character, because, we talked about this on one of the podcasts a couple of months ago about how, what's his name again now? Dwight. How Dwight is joining Fear the Walking Dead, so that's going to be interesting.
And it'd be interesting to see which timeline they're on now.
Yeah.
Because did they jump like they jumped, or are they gone back again? Are we behind again? Or who knows? But all I know is the producer of the show said there's going to be something going to happen, some sort of announcement.
Yeah.
Involved in this, so I don't know what this is all about. They're very cryptic, aren't they, on these programs?
They are indeed.
We'll give you a little bit, but we're not giving you it all. So just have to wait and see. Because unlike some people, I don't go and read other stuff. I just wait for the episodes, like you, Dom. I just wait and see, and then I get surprised, happily or not happily, but we'll see.
I like to keep my finger on the pulse, you see. I like to know what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's you all over the sod, isn't it? I like surprises. I never watch spoilers. Or read spoilers, as the saying is. So, there we have it. So that's Walking Dead done.
Yep, so that's one ticked off the list. Right, okay, so moving on then. So now we move on to Star Trek Discovery. I'll just do a quick recap then. So from the last time we discussed this show, we talked about the episode The Red Angel, and they set a trap to catch the Red Angel, and they did catch the Red Angel, and the Red Angel turned out to be Burnham's mother. So that was the big thing in that one. So the next few episodes, so I'm only going to touch on sort of bullet points really. So we found out the story about Burnham's mother, about the fact that she used the time travel suit when the Klingons attacked their home. She was trying to go back in time in order to try and warn them about the impending attack, but something went wrong. She got thrown into 950 years into the future, and that's when she discovered this reality that they've been warning us about something, destroyed all life in the universe and we need to stop it. She then was trying to find a way to rectify it, and she made, was it 840 jumps or something to try and change things. Yeah. That then threw back to that planet that we saw where the people during World War III got moved wholesale to this new planet.
The whole church got moved, didn't it?
Because that planet was where she'd ended up in the future. She was tethered to close to that planet, so that's why she was moving people to it. And she's basically going backwards and forwards, and that's why she kept showing up at key moments, because these are the moments that would help, sort of nudge the timeline in a different direction. So she was trying to subtly sort of help out with all of those moments, or so we thought at least. And then they were like, look, we need to, we need to do something here because we need to get the sphere data away from Control, because if Control has that, it will know everything, and then it'll allow all this to come to pass. Leyland on the section 41 had been possessed by Control, and so he was, quite interestingly, for like bigger universe Star Trek viewers, there was a lot of speculation about, oh, is this the Borg? Are we going to see, is Control, the early version of the Borg, of these sort of half human, half cyborg creatures? Is that because of the way it sort of assimilated him and took over his body and things like that?
Yeah.
They might revisit that in the future, but it doesn't look like they ended up going in that direction. But you had all of that stuff with him then becoming their enemy, trying to get all of the data. We had a visit back to the Klingon temple planet, the monastery, where the Klingon baby had been left, Tyler's son.
Yeah, Tyler and L'Oreal.
Because there they were the keepers of these time crystals, which they would need in order to try and send the sphere data far into the future so that Control couldn't get his hands on it. Pike went there, and then they used an interesting technique because of the time crystals. He saw what we know of of Star Trek canon about eventually Pike would end up seriously injured. Pike would end up in a sort of state of disability and things like that. He saw all of this. He saw flashes of himself.
That was awful, that bit, wasn't it?
Yeah, like how he would end up being all sort of scarred and mangled and in this kind of weird wheelchair thing and stuff like that. But his mind was strong enough to endure all these visions, so he was able to take a time crystal. But then also because of the whole wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff around those time crystals, L'Oreal and Tyler's baby had grown up.
Yeah.
So that was weird. They also had there was a Section 41 ship, 31 ship even, that got checked, that Spock and Burnham checked, and there was lots of old dead people, and there was a guy there that she knew, and all the way to, you had all this like, oh, he's helping and the stuff, but then it turned out that he was actually being controlled by Control.
Yeah, that's right. And Burnham was the ultimate target.
Yeah. And then everything went to hell because their location had been found. The information that other guy obviously managed to send back to the hive mind of Control or whatever alerted them to the fact that Discovery's got this plan. Discovery's got all of these things. They've got the time crystal. They've got this, that, and the other. So then Section 31 just had a whole fleet of ships that showed up.
Yeah.
And they were going to try and sort of take out the Discovery. So Pike ordered an evacuation and said, look, the only way...
they were going to destroy it.
Yeah, the only way around this is we got to destroy the Discovery. Oh, and the only other thing in all of that was that they realised that obviously they couldn't keep Burnham's mum with them, even though she was from this timeline. She now had resided in the future for so long. It's like, you can't keep me here. So they had to release her back. So she went back in, they turned all of their devices off and allowed her to get sucked back in to temporal space and back into the future.
Without the suit, though, wasn't it?
But without the suit, yeah.
Yeah, so we don't know what happened to her. She just went off, didn't she?
So they then obviously have the suit. But then the suit they had was the original version and not the version from the future, wasn't it, or something?
Yes, that was the one that they'd made originally, yeah.
So then we move into the end game.
Yes.
We have the finale was 2 parts, so again, I'll just bullet point the first part and then we'll talk about part 2. So they had this cool little meet up with the Enterprise, and they were like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to evacuate everybody off the Discovery and onto the Enterprise. Then they'll set the self-destruct, and then that will hopefully help everything from stopping happening. But then the sphere data that was kind of corrupted by Section 31 or whatever took control of the Discovery, and they couldn't get that to happen.
Also,
yeah,
right, so they were ready to evacuate. Burnham touched the crystal and she saw what's to happen.
Yeah,
she saw something.
Was it a torpedo getting lodged in the side of the ship or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the auto self-destruct wouldn't work as the shields were raised, but the data wouldn't let them destroy the ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then she had a brainwave, and she was like, what if we
Mm.
use the time crystal, rather than destroying the Discovery, we take Discovery into the future? So the plan we had about sending the sphere data into the future, what if we just take the Discovery into the future?
Mm.
And then that way Control can't get its hands on anything. I've got the suit, I've got the Red Angel suit, I can lead the charge and take it into the future. So Pike was like, okay, if you want to do this, it's a solid plan. And so I'll go back to Enterprise and we'll use that to try and, counter Control and all of these ships that are coming to
They
try
had
and
to build
destroy
a
this
new
all.
suit, didn't they?
Yeah.
Based on what she knew. So they had to. That was a rush job. So they got to build a new suit.
Yeah, they had to because they had the I can't remember what her name is now. The character they brought into it at the beginning of the season, the engineer woman.
Oh yeah.
They had
Grumpy.
her and Tilly and Stamets all
Stomach,
sort of
yeah.
working together to try and improve things. And then they got a new signal, so they were like, "Oh, we have to find out what the signal is." And then it was this planet which was ruled by this girl who was a friend of Tilly's. Now,
Tahiri.
yeah, I don't remember this
That's it.
girl. I don't remember an episode that she was in.
No.
So I
No.
think this must have been, they released a series of, they were called short treks, where they were like 6, 7 minute long mini episodes they released between season 1 and season 2 of Star Trek.
I don't know. No.
We never got to see them because they never aired them over here. But I, I, that was where my mind went. I thought, okay, I reckon this is probably from one of them episodes. That's how this girl and Tilly met each other. But she was like brilliant. She was really funny, and she was really like, groovy and stuff. But she was also really clever, and it just so happened that her planet has a abundant supply of, is it dilithium crystals?
Yeah, they can replicate a supernova.
Yeah, so she was like, I'm going to help you, especially, I've got stakes here. If this thing's going to destroy the whole galaxy, that includes my planet. So I'm going to help you to sort all of this out. So she came on board and helped them to rig things with the suit and with the time crystal. Then you had some people said, look, we're not going to let you do this alone, Burnham. We're not, you're not going into the future on your own. We're a crew, we're a team. We're going to work together. So, and even Giorgio was like, she was going to do that too.
Mm.
So because Pike was going back onto the Enterprise, he was like, well, somebody needs to be in charge here. So he basically made Saru captain. So that was good, and it was like deserved, because you're like, yeah, well, nobody better than Saru really to lead them. And then
So mum and dad came to see her, didn't they?
yes, they did. Yeah, that's right. Because it was all
They came
very
to see her
much,
because they knew what she was going to do, so they wanted to see her before, because they probably would never see her again.
yeah. And then you had like all the bits with the various crew members that decided they were going to do this with
Yeah.
her. They were
Tyler wasn't going to go.
yeah, but they all they were
Mm.
sending messages to their loved ones, weren't they, saying, basically like, you might not see me again, and I wanted to tell you this and stuff like that. So they were all basically preparing themselves that this might be a one-way trip.
Yeah.
And then the fleet arrived, and it was just the beginning of all-out war, and then that was the end of the first part.
Yes.
So now, here we go. So this is called
Right.
Such Sweet Sorrow. So what do you have? Because I've just been talking quite a bit there.
Right. Well, it was all go to get the suit made and ready. So and Discovery, but they were doing that, and then something happened. So Discovery couldn't communicate with them.
Mm-hmm.
There was all these drones.
Yeah, loads of them.
So many drones.
They had a
Oh,
very
yeah.
spectacular space battle, didn't they?
Yeah, and the Queen, she got in a Starfleet pod, didn't she?
Yeah.
So what are you still doing here? She goes, I'm not leaving till it's done, and her valuable was invaluable, wasn't it? Her knowledge, what she knew. So I thought, like, you got to keep her on board.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because she was like, she'd finished helping them do the building stuff, but then like, I'm not gonna not be a part of this. Again, reiterating the point, what kind of leader am I if I don't help defend my people?
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And then Georgia, because they wanted to get Leyland on the ship, because I said, if we can get him here, we can kick the shit out of him, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going like, no, we don't want to do that. But the ship was getting battered. The Stammet got injured on the way when they were dragging the suit. When they were taking the suit to wherever they were going to.
Yeah, because
go into the.
Something hit, like a photon torpedo or something hit that section of the ship, and they all got knocked flying, didn't they? And Stamets got injured.
Yeah, and then Spock said he was going with her. He said, I'm going to go in a pod to where you need to be to start it off. And she's going, no, no. And it's like, oh, so exciting.
Yeah, because she had to she had to actually go out into space and
Yeah.
be stood on top of something because she realized that she was like, she then had an epiphany, didn't she? And it was really clever because, like I said before about the thing with the mum, or so it seemed, it turns out the red bursts were not the mum at all.
Oh, yes, because the mum had said, I don't know about these red bursts.
Yeah.
What was it? And then they realised, I am probably still, because they said about the DNA or what they tested, they'd realised that she actually is the red, she's the one that we keep seeing.
Yeah.
It wasn't the mother, because she had done something to change everything that her mum couldn't do.
Yeah.
So that was like, oh, so exciting.
So she plotted out all the events that they have investigated this season. She plotted out all those points and the times, so then she was able to put in all these coordinates into the suit and bring up this like floating display in space and stuff, while Spock is sat there in a ship guarding her, sort of like chatting to her from the ship while she's on the outside. And she's like, I need to make all these jumps. I need to jump to all these points because otherwise all these things aren't going to happen. So I need, in order to, to keep time and causality running as it should, I need to jump to all these points so that I can be there to guide us to this place, to save me. I have to save myself when we went to that asteroid. I have to cause the Kelpian uprising. I have to do all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff, yeah.
So all the way through then the episode, we kept getting these bits where she was doing the jumps and we were seeing the same scenes, but from her perspective, of her arriving to do these various things, saving Saru and his sister, saving herself, doing all of these other bits and pieces. Because of that, though, because of her making these jumps and ensuring the timeline was secure, it meant allies came to their aid, and you had the Klingons turned up, and the Kelpians. Saru's sister was in a ship. That was awesome.
They had all that, plus Giorgio got Leyland on board.
Yeah.
So obviously, when she changed the thing, they got him in the cage, didn't they? Eventually, after a big fight, because he's an A1 sausage, apparently.
Yeah,
I had to write that one in. So when they got him into the cage, and because whatever she did, he just disappeared, didn't he?
Well, it was because they were using like magnets and stuff, weren't they? So it was like pulling out all the nano things and stuff like that. But yeah, that was cool as well, because she had this like fight sequence with Giorgio, and she was like defending everybody. And you also had that moment with the torpedo.
Yeah, he had the torpedo bit where the Admiral said she'd deal with it. Pike was thinking, all right, I'm going to deal with it, because that's what I've got to be there. And then she was like, oh, and then he got stuck, didn't he, Spock? He couldn't get back because his pod wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's right, because hadn't he been using the power for helping Burnham or something? But no, just quickly going back to what you said about the torpedo, though, because it was like she basically sacrificed herself, didn't she? Because they said, if this torpedo goes off, because it was still armed, and it's like, if this goes off, it's going to rip the Enterprise in two. The only way round it is to basically put a force field up around this section of the ship and quarantine it, but somebody needs to be in here, because I think it was like they needed to manually do something to it, and she was like, somebody needs to be on this side. So she made the decision to be the one to be on that side. And then it did detonate, but it didn't do as much damage to the Enterprise as it would have done.
No. Oh, that was sad.
So yeah, it was sad. So yeah, all that went down. So they took out Leyland. They obviously defeated the missile, and she did all of her jumps. And then it was then, right, okay, well, we've done all these other ones, so now there's one left to do, and that's
the final one.
Because even though we've defeated the Leyland control model, control is still active, control is still out here. We've still got to take this information, because even if we decommission control, there's no guarantee that something like this isn't going to happen again, and we can't allow this to happen, So the best solution is to just take all of this information out of the equation. And I sat there and I went, well played, Star Trek. You have now all of the things people were going on about, saying, oh, but where does this fit in the timeline? They've never mentioned things like a spore drive before. Oh, Spock had a sister. Interesting how that never came up. All these kind of things. And it was like, you found a really clever way of getting around all of this.
Mm.
Because it was like, right, we have to go into the future. That's the only way. So they set the course, and, you know, there was still all this battling going on around them, and they opened this kind of subspace corridor thing, and she went ahead, and then the Discovery was following after her, and it was like, oh, they're going to get there in time, because they were getting lots of firing on them and stuff, but then they got through, and then that was it, and
That
then
was gone.
all of the drone ships and stuff, all just because obviously at the same time Giorgio had taken out Leyland, so all the drone ships started just turning off and just floating in space.
Yeah.
And it was like, yay, the war has won. And then that was that, and the Discovery was gone. And then we got, it was like fade to black, wasn't it? And then the next thing, it was like an unnamed, unseen Starfleet higher up was doing an investigation into the events of that day.
Yeah.
And you
And they
got
had
to
to,
see
like-
them all appearing as holograms, like almost giving a testimony.
They basically said that the Discovery had blown up. They didn't know anything else. They all like just covered it all up, didn't they? So like, that's it now.
Yeah, and they were like, this will never be spoken of again because we can't, you know, for the safety of the timeline, for the safety of making sure that nothing leaks out, and so, because they're still worried about the threat of like an artificial intelligence or whatever. It's like, basically, this has to be completely off the records. You know,
Yeah.
we can't talk about these people, we can't talk about this ship, we can't talk about what happened. So then you go, this explains why Spock never spoke about his sister.
Yeah.
This explains why they never referred to spore technology and jump drives and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
It was a really clever way of doing it.
Tyler
you know?
got promoted as well, didn't he?
Yeah, well, because basically Leyland was gone, Giorgio's gone into the future with the Discovery. There was no one else to run control.
To run Section 31.
Yeah, Section 31 even, sorry, yeah. So that he was put in charge of that. And then, oh yeah, one of the last things, when you had the sad parting between Spock and Burnham, they're saying goodbye and everything, which was really sad.
She sent him a signal.
Yeah, so that he would know that they were
They
safe.
got in there. Yeah.
And
Oh no! So we had the bit was like he came on. He went. We had him in his room, and then he came onto the bridge, and he shaved off his beard. He had a new looked like he did in like our.
yeah, and
Spock.
the blue uniform that Spock always had that made him stand out from everyone else. It was Burnham's uniform.
Yeah.
It was
he came
her
out
uniform.
looking like that. Yeah. And then they got the seventh signal at the end. It's like, yeah.
And then it was like,
baby, she did it, baby.
they just kind of gave each other a look, sort of thing, and then it's like, okay, we don't need to
Back
do
to
anything
business.
about that. And then it was like, okay, so now everything is as it should be. Spock is in a blue uniform, freshly shaved, no sister, on the Enterprise with Captain Pike. You know, everything is as it should be in the world of Star Trek. So all the people that have had all these criticisms, it's like they sewed it all up. You know, they made it fit with the continuity of existing Star Trek canon. So I was really impressed. I thought, I'm really impressed with this. I mean, you could argue, you could say, oh yeah, well that wasn't the plan all along. They've just been adapting it because of all the criticism. I want to suspend my disbelief. I want to believe that this was always the plan, and I'm happy with what they did. And I'm now really excited because we know we're getting a season 3.
Yeah, and what?
So now they're no longer tethered to the canon of Star Trek. They're no longer tethered.
So they can do what they want to do,
history.
can't they?
Yes, they can do what they want because they've just gone, presumably, more than 950 years into the future.
Yeah.
So this is going to be exciting on multiple levels because, like I said, they can still have the legacy of Star Trek and they can still maybe touch on things that happen, but now they're going to be touching on events from a historical perspective of these things that happened in the past, not in the timeline that they're in, but also this has never been done in Star Trek. They have never had a show this far into the future. So they're basically going ahead of time now, beyond all the other Star Trek. Well, from my understanding anyway, it's going to go beyond every show. Obviously, Enterprise was set in the past. This was set in the past. So now we're going to get a show when it returns that's going to be further ahead in the timeline. So the storytelling possibilities alone are really exciting.
And anything goes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, good job, Star Trek.
Very, very, very good.
I salute you.
Yes.
And also the thing we know as well is that the woman that came in to be she was in charge of one of the episodes, which was the episode we said was really, really good. And then we then found out that same woman is now going to be the showrunner for season 3. And
For
it's
the new season, yeah.
if if the rest of the season is anywhere as good as that, Michelle Paradise, that's it.
Yeah.
If the rest of the show is as good as that episode that she was in charge of, then it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really good, really, really good episode,
I
and
love,
a
I
really
love
good
Star Trek.
finale.
It's so good, yeah. Clever the way it all turned around where we go, oh, she's not the Red Angel. And then it went, well, actually, she still is the Red Angel. It's like, yay!
Yeah, but can I say something that may be a little bit controversial? I really enjoyed the big space battle, the effects and everything that was going on in this final episode, but
Nothing compares.
to the
Nothing
Orville.
compares to the Orville.
Exactly. Isn't it weird that a show that probably, I'm not saying it doesn't have a big budget because it's on Fox and things like that, but the budget, I believe the budget on Star Trek would be much bigger. You know,
Yeah.
it's a legacy show. It's been around forever. They're going to have a bigger budget for CGI, special effects, and all of this lot. I still think that the big battle sequence they had in their two-parter on the Orville with Isaac's people and all of that stuff, I felt that was so much better.
Yes. And it's because it looks so like dated.
Yeah.
Because obviously they make it look dated, don't they? Really colourful, like the old fashioned Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
You expect it to look less realistic.
Yeah.
But it looks better.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, yeah, baby.
That was really, really good. But yeah, so there we go. So that's Star Trek Discovery. So we've got, I don't know when that's going to return. Like I say, it has been greenlit for a third season.
It usually starts at the beginning of the year, doesn't it? So we're talking January next year.
Yeah, because when
it usually comes back in the new year. Came back on the new year, about the 7th.
It did. Yes, you're right. It was
January
like
or something.
The 17th was when the first episode
Yeah,
came
something
out.
like that. Yeah.
So we're looking at about this, not this time, but like that time next year, at least. I'll tell you, just as a quick side note, this is just only because it's another show that's on Netflix, but I want to know when we're getting a new season of Lost in Space.
Oh yeah.
Because obviously that got confirmed that it was coming back for another season, but that's been ages since that was on.
That'd be interesting, because that was really exciting. That was.
Yeah.
I was impressed with that series, because I'm a diehard Lost in Space fan, and that worked really well. And it ended with a real exciting cliffhanger as well, didn't it? So it's like, yeah. Oh, you never know.
So hopefully, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Maybe we'll hear some more about that this year. I mean, the thing is, you get certain things get revealed or shown off or whatever at Comic-Con. You know, they've done that in the past where, you know, not only you've got the movies that are coming out, but they also have panels for TV shows and things. So maybe there's going to be an announcement at Comic-Con, which is, when's that, July, August time. So they may be like, oh yeah, you know, in September or October, Lost in Space will return. So you never know. We may get it before the end of this year. They may, you know, make an announcement at Comic-Con, but we will have to wait and see. But that was just a random thing. I just thought because that's also Netflix. And
well, yeah, I actually had bullet pointed Lost in Space in that episode at some point when we were talking. I think it was the bit where I think I said it about a few weeks ago when we were on before, when I said about the mum.
Yeah.
Lost in Space. So. I just read that as well, so I was like, oh, that just reminded me.
How bizarre.
How bizarre.
Oh,
anywho.
Okay. Right, so now we're going to get into the section of the show where we're going to talk about our DC programs in the Arrowverse. So we're going to start with Supergirl. So the last one we discussed was the House of L episode where we got the backstory about Lex Luthor and basically how he had been instrumental in many things that had been going on throughout the course of Supergirl since the show started.
Yes.
They did that really clever thing where it was like, oh, this thing was because of Lex, and this thing was because of Lex. So we had that. So then, so again, as I mentioned previously, we're just going to round up these things so that when we get to our next podcast, we'll be fresh. We had All About Eve, so they're like basically going to try and track down Eve. So they're three girls, Alex, Lena, and Supergirl, head out to the countryside and they find Eve's cousin,
Oh, yes, yes.
weird woman.
The auntie. Oh, I thought she was her auntie, but yeah, she was her cousin, wasn't she?
Yeah. So they try and get information out of her to try and find out if she knows where Eve is, and she's sort of very big on Eve, like, oh, she helped me, and because she had like cancer or something, so Eve like helped her, so she was quite loyal to Eve. Eventually they found out where Eve's lab was. They then got the definitive proof that it was Eve that had shot James. And then you had this we discussed this obviously when you and me talked about this off recording, but you had a very convenient moment where they're in this lab, they're finding out all this information, they're like, oh, it was Eve that that shot Jimmy and all of this stuff. And then they were talking about the experiments and to do with the kryptonite hearts and things. And then, as if like in perfect timing, when they discovered the truth, this wall opened and a Metallo robot guy with a kryptonite heart came out.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, oh, well, that was quite good timing, wasn't it? That he just happened to reveal himself at the moment that they worked everything out. So, that was a real kind of TV show moment. And they had all that stuff with the fight with this creation and stuff. And then that's when they realised about, what's his name? Otis had obviously been
That's it, Otis.
part of that program too. And that's how Otis was back. They then had the bit with John. John obviously left Earth, went to go to Mars in order to put back the treasure trove of knowledge that he'd been passed on from his father, because he was like, I'm not worthy for this, I'm the Martian Manhunter, I'm not this sort of monk-like wise man figure. So it's like, we'll put it back there, and then one day somebody else worthy will find it. And then the big high of that episode was the attack on the White House, basically, where Red Daughter was dressed as Supergirl. She turned up, she attacked the White House, killed a bunch of people, and basically framed Supergirl. Kara had gone there to try and sort of stop things, but she got trapped by a trick to do with Eve, and she got trapped in this suit, so she could only watch as this attack was taking place. And then Red Daughter flew out of the White House, hovered above all these people who were stood outside protesting against the Alien Amnesty Act, and she sort of just, I think did she laser beam them with her eyes as well? She killed some people or something?
Yeah.
So then there was a thing on the news afterwards. It sort of was like, I don't know whether it was later that day or the next day or something. There was a thing on the news to say that the president had declared martial law, and also that Supergirl was now public enemy number one because of the attack on the White House. And so she went to Alex, and while she was there, Haley was also there. And they basically were like, we believe you. Oh, and Lena as well, actually. That it wasn't you. We don't believe you did this. So it's like, oh, that's good. She's got some allies then.
The other little bit on that was the fact that James realised he needed help.
Oh, yeah,
and he went to his sister. Because he had a bit of an episode, because he was in the room, wasn't it, when it all went off, and he was hearing things, and he was a bit confused with what was going on.
Yeah.
So they touched on that just briefly, that he went to see his sister and said, I need help.
Yeah.
Yep, there you go, that's that.
So then following that, you had, our core team of heroes, including, is it Captain, Commander, Lieutenant, what's her rank, Haley? I can't remember now.
But Lieutenant, I think.
She, was obviously on board with our heroes to say, yeah, we know Supergirl's innocent. Lockwood, who's now been given full access to the DEO, was like trying to create a witch hunt to go and find her and take her out. Brainy was worried about the alien registry thing that they have, because they obviously have on file all the known aliens, and he's like, if he gets his hands on that, he's going to like hunt them down. So he was like, we have to do something about that. What else happened in that one?
Is that the one where they went to the prison?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, they went to see that funny little man.
Yeah, they went to the prison to see what was in his room, and she found a load of books that were all to do with her.
Yeah.
She was a kid. And the guy next to his cell knew more than he let on and wasn't prepared to tell her, because she was Supergirl, going, oh, you've just put a bullseye on our head now. They don't care about us. They're gonna bomb the prison, basically, because you're in here.
Yeah.
They don't care because we're just nobodies. And obviously she then left Lena in the cell and sort of sealed her in and went off to deal with what was the right. Because I think, yeah, that's right. Because Otis got in and opened the cells, didn't he?
That's right. And then there was a
So
prison
she
riot.
went and started. Yeah, she was trying to quell it all, and then she ended up having to change back into Kara.
Yeah.
And that's where she met the cellmate. Because he thought she
yeah.
was just a reporter, so he said, "Oh, I can tell you stuff." Blah blah blah.
And he gave her a flash drive.
Yeah, that's it.
And Lena also found the hidden room in Lex's cell that had information in. And then obviously again it went bad for Supergirl because she was framed for the riot. So that was like, oh, that's not good. So Kara was like, I need to stop being Supergirl for a little while this dies down. Then you move on to the next part, which was a lot to do with Dreamer, because for her stepping up and saying, right, well, without Supergirl, someone else needs to step in and be the guardian of National City. So she took on that thing. Lockwood decided to go back to being Agent Liberty, and because of this martial law thing and stuff, the Children of Liberty have kind of been deputized by the president. So they were rounding up aliens.
He was rounding up the aliens, and his son, he got his son to help him, didn't he? But the son chased a boy, and then realised it was his mate from school. So started thinking, I don't know if I want to be involved in this.
Yeah, and then that's why the son then was like, maybe my dad's not right here, and this sort of anti-alien thing, because it's like, this guy's always been my friend, and so what, he's an alien and stuff like that. So that caused a bit of division between Ben and his son.
We also had
the thing with Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy from the press thing, and his sister that could get information for her.
And they were also trying to get to the source of his PTSD.
Oh, not Jimmy. Yeah, James. You're on about James.
Yeah. And they were trying to get to the bottom of his panic attacks and stuff, and testing out his powers and things. And they were trying, and was that the whole bit where you got the thing to do with the funeral?
Yeah, the brainy suggested a mind palace.
Yeah.
And it turned out that he was seeing all these weird things that didn't add up, and he was saying, I was there, and the sister was saying, no, you weren't. And basically, it all turned out that he was stuffed in a coffin by these boys, and he didn't get to the funeral.
Yeah.
And that's what was causing the drug to cause anxiety, the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And because he also had lied to everyone and said, no, I was at a diner, I didn't go. Because he couldn't remember that bit, because he'd blocked it out, hadn't he?
That's right, yeah.
So it's all like made him like, I can deal with it now. I know what's happening. And
then because of all of this, them unraveling all this stuff, they discovered that his powers are basically identical to a Kryptonian's. So that was interesting. Kara was trying to find a way to still clear her name and bring the truth to light about what was going on. And her and Lena discovered the link to Kaznia. Before
that, Kara did a live interview with Dreamer.
That's right, yeah. She did, yeah.
And Blackwood's men all got into Catco and were like kicking ass and that.
Yeah.
And Brainy and James came to the rescue, and James crushed his gun in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, how'd you do that? How'd you do it? Where's Dreamer? We need... Because obviously he's all that for Dreamer now, because she was the one that got in the way of his plan, plus she'd gone on television. So he freaked out about that. The girl from the office, the boy from the office's sister, decided to give her the information she needed about that what's it called? The brand name.
Ameritech.
Yeah, yeah. So Lena told Kara the truth about working with Lex as well.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't help herself, and they worked out all these things. Who's this Sebastian? And they worked out it was a name Lex used, another like an alias, and they worked out that it's to do with Kaznia.
Yeah. So then they were like, and right, also, well, we're going to have to go there then.
And then the ending of that was when Lockwood went home,
mm-hmm.
found his wife had been killed by the alien, the wife of the man that he had arrested.
Yeah, and she just sort of looked at him and then ran out of the house, and the wife was there dead.
Yeah.
And then the final part of that, we saw John on Mars reach this place. He put the staff in the ground. A big holographic projection of his dad appeared. He basically congratulated him on completing his mission. He did the right thing. And then he's like, now you can return to being the Martian Manhunter, go home, and then one day somebody will come for this knowledge who will be worthy of it. You've done well, my son, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, that's that done. So then
They go to Casnet.
yeah, so then the next episode, so they had James in the Fortress of Solitude testing out all of his powers, and they were like, do this thing, and and then he was like, I don't want to do that, and he's like, do you have to hit me with that thing? And because like Dreamer had the big hammer, and it's like, do you really need to do that? And
They
then
found it's flame-proof as well, didn't they?
yeah, that's right. But then Brainy got summoned away, so he was like, I have to go. You will have to carry on without me. And he sort of head off. And then she's like, right, should we carry on? And James is like, So that was quite funny. And you had the little subplot with Alex talking about the baby, that she'd been accepted for an adoption. So you had all of that stuff with her and James's sister.
Lockwood walked out of his wife's funeral because he's so obsessed with finding Dreamer.
Yeah.
That is why Brainy was called out, because he'd gone to the DEO.
Yes, and they were worried. Yeah, it was like, what's he going to do? He's going to try and find something. So he's like, I must go and try and, do some damage control here. Lena and Kara headed off to Casnia, and they went on Lena's self-piloted aeroplane. And then it got like...
They were hit by purple lightning.
Yes, which was like, where's that come from? What's this purple lightning? So the plane was going to go down, and she was like, don't worry, Kara, I can sort this out. I know how to pilot. And so she rushed forward.
She went into the pilot bit, and then Kara couldn't help herself, thought, I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
Changed back into Supergirl, and she's going, I'm doing it. And there's Supergirl underneath, like, yeah, I'm just guiding it. And then when they landed, she was going, Kara, are you all right? And she obviously then was back with her glasses of Kimbo and all that. It's like, oh yeah, I'm fine.
I must have passed out because of the stress.
But Lena thought she was so clever, didn't she?
Yeah.
Like, I did it. I didn't know I could pilot a plane.
So that was really funny.
That was funny.
So then they went into this facility and they're looking around. They're like, oh, it's quite abandoned. I thought there would be people. What's going on? And so they were investigating. And then they started finding all of these various things. And then they uncovered Lex's stuff to do with Red Daughter, and also
there was some kryptonite as well, though, wasn't there?
Yeah,
and she is obviously being Kara.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, what's going to happen? And then they saw the footage of the mission, the Russian Supergirl, didn't they?
Yeah, and then it was like, wait,
yeah.
And then she was really like, what's going on? That's me. Well, she didn't say it's me. She was like, that looks like Supergirl, but it's not Supergirl. And they were like, this is really strange. And so they started looking a bit further into it, and they discovered his plan to attack America. And then Eve showed up.
Yes.
And so they had a bit of a standoff with Eve. And then
I think she was a victim at first, though, wasn't she? Like,
yeah, you have to help me. I'm so glad you arrived.
Yeah. I knew she was conning them, though.
Mm.
She led them to a lab and had kryptonite in it, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And that's when they discovered the truth about the stuff.
That's where they found out footage of the Supergirl.
And also to do with Otis and to do with the Metallo program and all of this stuff. And then they tied up the Eve that was there. They tied her up, and they were still continuing. And then Eve showed up. And it's like, wait a minute, Eve sat in the chair. Why is there another Eve? And then what they discovered was that there was the facility in the desert where they send the dangerous metas and aliens, and there was one that they'd encountered previously. I can't remember what it was. Was it just called Copy, that was able to make clones? And he'd been doing experiments, and he'd been obviously extracting powers and abilities from different creatures for whatever reason. And it appeared that Eve had undergone this because she's now able to create clones of herself. And she sort of absorbed the one in the chair into herself, so she was then one being again. And then they had like loads of them showing up, didn't they?
Yeah, and then what happened? Was it at that point where the self-destruct went off, or was that before, after Kara had found the cell with she found a cell, didn't she, where they kept the Russian girl?
It was before that, yeah. The self-destruct went off. They were then trying to figure out, we got to get out of here and stuff. And while doing that, Kara stumbled across the room and found all the pictures and all the books and everything else. And, she was just completely in shock about, like, how much this girl's had her under surveillance, how much she looks like her, all the stuff. There was stuff to do with Alex and things like that. And then things were, like, going off and things were collapsing, and they found a route out, and Lena was like, come with me. And she's like, oh, wait, I forgot my recorder, I have to go and get it. And she went back and instead she just torched the room, didn't she?
They also, while they were there, they found out, isn't that when they found out that they found a document which said that somebody in the presidency, it was like the undersecretary woman,
Was like a
was
mole.
behind it all.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
so
working for Lex.
that's why they had to get out, yeah. So they got out.
And then you had the bit where Lena obviously got to the plane while Kara was kind of absent, and so then she turned into Supergirl. And there's our little guest appearance from Bruce, people at home. The geeky dog who loves the Orville. So we had Kara turn back into Supergirl, and she was fighting off multiple Eve clones. And then that one got on the aircraft, on the aeroplane.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So she was having a massive fight on there with the Eve person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Kara had obviously gone back and burnt all the photographs, didn't she, to make sure no one could see, like, obviously she's related to Alex, and that's her reveal of who she was.
Yeah.
And when she got back on the plane, she said, "Oh, Eve's dead." And then she was going, "Oh, another person that let me down, and I trust people." And Kara was just about, wasn't she, to reveal
tell her the truth, yeah.
She was Supergirl. And then she goes, "But at least I can rely on you." And she sort of turned around, like, the glasses were back on. It's like, I'm not going to tell her yet.
Yeah, because she was like, I don't know what I'd do if someone else close to me betrayed my trust again. And she's like, oh, no, I can't tell her. So I was like, oh, that was so annoying.
Meanwhile, back at the Brady's trying to stop Lockwood finding out stuff, and he found the serum, didn't he?
Yeah, because he went into the room, and then Brainy was like, you're not allowed to go in there. And he's like, I can do what I want. And they broke in, him and his big, his knucklehead henchman soldier guy. And
he took the serum as well.
He did take the
serum.
And
then he came, remember that bit at the end of that bit where they were, he was indestructible.
Yep.
And they was fighting Dreamer and Brainiac, and then John came going, rah, rah, rah. No, not Brainiac, James, because James was there.
Yeah, because James picked up
Brainiac
a card,
was a soldier, wasn't he? He had him like a soldier go, we need to destroy them. I was thinking, I can't destroy them. And then, James threw a car. There was all this action, and then John came.
Yeah, just out of nowhere, he just showed up, and he just basically stopped everything from happening, and he was just like, saved the day.
And then he said, then he got, what's his name, James, to go for the petrol tank or something.
Yeah.
Because he thought, I'll chuck him into that and burn him.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't do any good, did it? He's still like, damn, he's still alive.
That's, again, going back to the whole discovery of the Kryptonian connection, that if James is flame-proof, then so's Lockwood. So, yeah, but then they managed to get everybody out of there, and the soldiers, because the soldiers were agreeing with Brainy, because Brainy was like, this is not right, we have a constitution that we agreed to abide by and all of this stuff, and so he's like, lay down your arms, and lots of the soldiers started going, yeah, we're not going to do this is wrong. So that's when Lockwood went all like, rah.
And his son's turned against him, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It's like, his wife's dead, the son's turned against him.
Yeah.
It's like, he's got no one now.
And he basically blamed him, didn't he? He was like, the reason Mom's dead is because of this single-minded crusade of yours, and like all these things wouldn't have happened if you hadn't gone down this path. I hate you, and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's not good.
But I had a feeling the boy was going to turn that after the bit with the alien boy.
Yeah.
I thought, because he confronted the mum, hadn't he, the week before, and said, are you sure you agree with everything Dad's doing? And she was going, yes, of course, it's great. Dad's, Father knows best and all this stuff. That was the week I thought he was going to turn on him, but he didn't. Obviously, the mother got killed in the meantime. But then, because of the information that they found in Kaznia, there's our girl. She was Kara, wasn't she? She turned up as Kara. And she said, I've got some really important information, President. He put it in a drawer. And was she arrested?
Well, yeah, basically, she went in, he ordered his guards out, she noticed he had a big chunk of kryptonite sat on the table.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, because they give it him to protect him from Supergirl.
Yeah, so then she was telling him about the information, he was like, that's really interesting, thank you for bringing this to my attention. And then the next thing, somebody came in behind her and put like a black bag over her head. And
he shoved it in the drawer, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he shoved the paperwork in the drawer.
And then you're like...
That backfired on her, didn't it?
So it's like, he's clearly in on it all.
Oh no, it's like, oh.
So I was like, oh dear. So yeah, and then that was that. So
Well,
basically, that's where we got
so
to.
far up to date. It's
Hmm.
funny because I will just throw this in. I got a friend of mine who watches this,
Yeah.
and she's always been a massive Supergirl fan, and I was going, it's a bit. And we had this conversation the other day, and I said, isn't it so exciting now? I said because
Hmm.
apparently a new writer took over, and it's just like I really enjoy watching Supergirl now. It's like I can't wait to watch Supergirl. Whereas before I was going, yeah, I know Supergirl. It's been so good, so I can't wait to see how the ultimate, how it finishes off over the next few weeks. So we've got 2 episodes now. Talk about
Yeah, we
Friday.
have. Yes, we have. We've got the episode that's been on this week that we'll be talking about on
Next
Sunday's
podcast. Yeah.
podcast, and then we'll have one more, which is the finale. So, right, okay. So moving swiftly on. So talking about shows that you go, oh yeah, this program and stuff. The program that's turned me that I used to
It
really
used to be our
enjoy,
favourite programme.
which I feel has just really lost the plot now. And do you know what? I will say this. This might be a controversial opinion, but I'm kind of glad it's ending now. Now with the way it's been going. The thing is, I sat and considered my thoughts on Arrow, and I thought, have I turned against it because I know it's ending? And then I thought, no, because there are plenty of other shows that I'm still enjoying that are coming into their final seasons or whatever. So it's got nothing to do with that. It just feels like even before they announced that season 8 was going to be the last one, I feel like they were already aware that they were wrapping it up, and so
Mm.
they seem to have kind of lost their drive for Arrow a little bit, and it's showing in the episodes. At least from my perspective, anyway. I just feel
Yeah.
it's lost its way a little bit.
I mean, in the previous Arrows over time where we've had flashbacks to do with things,
Yeah,
it's easy enough to like marry it up with what's going on.
yeah,
But with the way they're doing it now, we've got all these like snippets which come in, and then you go, well, where am I with the real story? This isn't. Do you know what I mean? It's not marrying up with what you're doing in the real world, if you know what I mean.
yeah.
So I find it very difficult to like make notes on it.
So you had so picking up from where we last were. So you had the whole episode, the Laurel-centered episode, where it was like Laurel, with everything that's gone on, she's been framed for stuff, so she decided to go back to being a criminal. She found an ex-associate of hers. They then decided to start doing criminal activities again. Felicity was trying to be her conscience and say, "You've changed. You're not like this anymore." And then you had a cool little cameo where they brought Sarah in to try and get through to her and help, in the hope that, yes, I know I'm not technically your sister, but there is, you had a me and I had a you, so we're the closest thing we've got to sisters. And then you had the whole Canaries thing, because you had Dinah and you had Sarah and then obviously Laurel,
Mm.
and they were trying to get her to go back to being good again. And you had all of that stuff, and it was okay, but it just, it wasn't all that compelling. You had Oliver and Diggle trying to get to the bottom of the death of Emiko's mother, and discovered that it was one of the longbow hunters that had been involved in that. So it's like, oh, there's connection to Diaz, which is connection to the Ninth Circle. So all of this is connected. So it's like, okay, so if Emiko's mother was killed by this guy, then it brings it all back to the Ninth Circle. And that he was hired by Dante. So it's like, oh, the person that you're following and the person you're working with is the person that basically was instrumental in your mother's death. You
Yeah.
had the stuff in the future where they used the technology to take down the Canary network. So again, tying in with this being a Canary-centric episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Mia wanted to go after people, and then Laurel shows up in the future and saved Mia.
Saved her and give her something to give to her mum.
Yeah, as a helmet, give it to your mum.
Yeah.
And she's like, the Canaries aren't all gone, so like I'm here, and we've got some others working with us. So you had that, and yeah, that was okay. And then you had the episode that was centered around Diggle, which was quite cool, where you got to meet General Roy Stewart.
Yeah.
And
It
he
was
was
his
very
stepdad.
formal, yeah. And then we found out after the initial bit of like, oh, this is just a military contact. It's like, no, it's his stepdad. That was really what was interesting about this episode, though, was the further expanding this theory that John might end up becoming another character, because you had the bit in the crossover where the Flash, the old Flash, where he saw John and he was like, "Why aren't you wearing your ring?" And he's like, what are you talking about? And it's like, because there is a version out there of John Stewart who is the Green Lantern, and
Yeah. Yeah.
The fact that they brought in this character this episode whose surname is Stewart, and it's like, okay, so if John had taken his stepfather's surname, he'd be John Stewart, which would make him the character that becomes the Green Lantern. So it's like, oh, maybe that's something they're going to pick up on when they do the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, when everything comes back in October. So that was interesting. But yeah, so you had all that, and they were like, yeah, we're enlisting their help. We're going to try and steal the was it the Archer program and sort of
Yeah.
get away from the Ninth Circle and help take them down. So you had that really cool bit where the Ninth Circle basically show up at Oliver's house, and they've got, Felicity and her friend are trying to fight off all these guys, and then all these soldiers just crash in through the ceiling.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, the cavalry's here. You had all stuff. There was a thing to do with the biological weapon, which is going to be used on the city. And it's like, oh, and that's the other thing that annoyed me, though. It was yet again, it was like, oh, okay, here we go again. Another plot to try and kill everybody in Star City. Haven't we done this numerous times? It's like, another crazy person is going to try and wipe out the city with a virus. So it's like, oh, okay. So then that was also the episode then when Oliver then basically revealed the truth to Emiko, telling her it was Dante that was behind it. And he was like, I did it for you. It was like to make you stronger and stuff. But then she turned on him and killed him, didn't she? And she's like, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm fully in charge now. Yes, I appreciate what you did, but, I can't forgive you for the fact that you killed my mother. Diggle learned the truth about his stepfather because he'd always believed him to be a coward, and it was because of him that his actual father died. Then he discovered, no, in fact, it was his father was a bit rash in his decision-making, and if it wasn't for Stewart, the other people wouldn't have lived, so he was actually more of a hero. So,
also on that episode,
yeah,
the Archer program got taken, and Felicity decided, well, maybe it's a bad thing. Maybe I shouldn't have bothered with it because it's gonna be dangerous. And the girl said, oh no, but I've got the prototype, so we can make another one.
Yeah, but Felicity was like, no, it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, they still got the code. There was another little nod in that episode to another DC Comics character, because they talked about a potential partnership with a place called Magnus Labs.
Mm.
And Magnus is, in the comics, there's a guy, he's Magnus and the Metallic Men or something, or he basically creates like AI robot things and stuff. So that was a little nod to that, another comic book thing.
Right.
Whether that plays into anything or whether that was just an Easter egg for comic book readers, I don't know. And then in the flash forward, you had the whole really interesting bit. Now this bit was good. So the helmet thing that they'd got, they needed a power thing for it, so they went to the Deathstroke gang. And it turns out JJ, who is the actual son of John Diggle,
it's the son that we wondered about him, didn't we, a while ago?
He went rogue, he went off the rails, and he's now the leader of this like cult of Deathstroke.
Yes.
So there's loads of Deathstrokes now, and he's the leader of them all. And him and his brother have got a tenuous relationship. And even though he goes in and he gets to talk to him and stuff, when they leave, all these guys come out and they're like, oh, your brother has a message for you, and they try and kill them.
Yeah.
So then they had to fight against all these Deathstrokes and escape from there, but they managed to get away, and they get the thing back to Felicity, who gets it all up and running, and they learn that Galaxy One has expanded the Archer program to target, was it to target all metas? Something like that. So there was that one, and then the next episode we got the return of Roy Harper in the...
That was the episode when they were piecing together an incident.
Yes, so that was interesting. It started out with an interrogation, like where they were...
I thought you'd like that one, because I thought, when I said to you, I think you might like this one.
Yeah, no, I liked the format of it, because it was like a murder mystery. They started at the end, and then we got the story played out, like in flashbacks, that somebody had been killed, and who was responsible, and everybody was covering for everybody, and nobody was responsible, and nobody was refusing to give everyone up. And then it turned out, obviously, Roy had returned to Star City, and he teamed back up with them to try and help them take out the Ninth Circle and stop this biological weapon. It was security guards that were killed, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it turned out it was Roy.
And it was Roy, and the reason it was Roy was because at some point when him and yeah, Thea and Nissa went off, he was
Yes.
killed.
Yeah, he died and they used the Lazarus pit on him.
And because we've seen in the past, the Lazarus pit
Yeah.
creates like a bloodlust in people to begin with. That took over him, and that's why he had this complete spaz out and he killed the guards. So he wasn't in complete control of his
Control of what he's
faculties.
doing now.
So that, and then he was like, "I'll give myself up. I'll go to prison." And it's like, no, you've done this. You've already done this once. You know, you took the rap for being the Green Arrow once
Yeah.
before. You can't do this again.
Because even
So
Dina was in on it, because when they showed it all,
yeah,
as in real time, she was actually there as well, wasn't she?
and she was obviously having to just follow procedure as the
Doing
the
the
police
interrogation, but
captain.
she was actually there as well.
Mm. So yeah, it was
Yeah,
clever, and it was clever the way it all played out, and when we got the eventual
yeah.
reveal that it was Roy.
And
So
then we had
got
Oliver go after Amika
yeah, because Felicity found their headquarters,
and found out she is the leader of the Ninth Circle.
and she pulled a horrible trick on them because she was like, "I've got the security footage of what happened, so you're covering
Yeah.
this up, and I'm going to release it, and you're all going to be public enemy number one again."
And the
Um,
thing she was going to tell her dad was that the gambit was dangerous, but because he was dissing her, she
yeah,
didn't tell him. So she knew he was going to die. Hoped that glad he died, and wished he Oliver had as well.
and then
And
she's
then she
like,
blew up
"I'm
the
gonna,
building.
yeah, I'm gonna destroy your legacy, so that your legacy will be destroyed and you'll be shown as a villain." And now I'm gonna kill you. And she blew up the building, and he was buried. And then that was kind of where that ended.
Yeah.
But then that moves us into the penultimate episode. So
Yes.
we will talk about. Oh no, we will talk about this now because yeah, we've got the final episode to watch, which we'll talk about on Sunday. So
Yes.
then we had this weird thing where Oliver's trapped, everyone else is like trapped in the building, and Tommy Merlin appears.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's what? What's going on? And you had this whole elaborate thing where basically Tommy helped him to free himself. Tommy was talking to him about everything and like trying to get him to listen to various things. I gave in to the darkness. You almost went down that path, but you came back. Be the best part of you. Don't go on a revenge mission and all of this kind of stuff. And in the meantime, Oliver's trying
Mm.
to get out of this cave in by using explosive arrows. And I love that shot. You know the shot when he first fired the arrow that had the like explosives in, and it
Mm.
like zoomed in on it, and it was like a slow mo, and you got all these little bits come out. So you had the arrow, and then it like these little round bits came out around it in a circle. So then when it hit the
Mm.
wall, it was like this big explosion. I was like, that was a really cool little special effect. I like that. But yeah, he was just basically trying to talk sense into him, wasn't he? And he was like, if you go down this path, nobody's going to survive it because, you know, you're going to sacrifice everything. And if you do that, you're going to get reckless. And he's like, no, I've got to do this. This is the right way. She can't continue. There's no other way to stop this. And then you have this whole thing where he did get out and eventually confronted Emiko. And then he shot her, but then everybody else was dead. And I was like, wait, I don't understand what's happening. Why are they all dead? Like,
I never realised it was a dream.
yeah, but at the time, before it was revealed, it was like
I know what it was. Oh, what?
before it was revealed as a hallucination, I thought he was hallucinating who he'd shot, and really he had been firing arrows at all of his friends.
Yeah.
When in his mind he'd been seeing enemies, but really it was actually his friends, and he'd like killed everybody. And I was like, wait, what? And then it was like, no, none of that happened. That was almost like this is what could happen.
Could happen if you act the way, if you've got the same mindset you've got now.
Yeah. So you then had the whole thing with obviously them all becoming public enemy number one, and the SCPD raided Smoke Tech
Yeah.
because they're like, you're behind all this, you're behind the cover up, you've got stuff to do with the weapon, you're connected to the Ninth Circle. All of this time we thought you were operating above board, but really you're not. And they were like, no, you don't understand, it's not like that. Felicity and her friend escaped, where Emiko like came like after them, and Felicity was like, "Don't, please, don't, I'm pregnant." And she's like, okay. So she shot the arrow away, and then it was like left them to live, but it's like, oh, now she knows Felicity's pregnant. That's not good.
Mm.
She then there was the reports about the Green Arrow attacking the police station.
Yeah.
And it was like, wait, because they were Oliver's arrows and stuff, and it turned out she had stolen his arrows. She'd gone dressed as him again to try and frame him even further. So then you then had the showdown between Oliver and Emiko, and he was basically trying to take the better route and trying to convince her this is the wrong path, stand down, and he did. He could have killed her, but he didn't.
He didn't, and she got away with a weapon.
She got away with a weapon, yeah, and it's like,
But then
oh
we had the flashback where William went against Felicity's advice.
Yeah, because she
went
wanted
back
to
to
keep him out of it.
Galaxy and met with Renee.
Yeah.
And he blew Renee's cover, didn't he?
He had a downloading device on his watch.
Yeah.
And they're chatting to the guy, and the guy got a message, and he was like, if you'll excuse me for a moment. And he went out of the room, and then came back in with guards, and it's like, oh, they must have detected the download. And
then they found out Alana, which I said back in that episode, she said, I've got the protocol for it, was the one who did the deal with Galaxy.
Yeah, so all that time
and now Galaxy got them all now.
Yeah, in the present timeline where she had made the copy of the Archer program, she still had it, and then she ended up finishing it and then selling it to them. And then she said, I had no choice. They threatened my family. They threatened my loved ones, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, all those years ago, I told you to do what was best for you and your family and go into hiding and stuff, in order to protect your family. I just did the same thing, but I didn't know it was going to end up like this. This is not what I had in mind. And then, obviously, so then Renee and William were caught, and then Galaxy 1 basically infiltrated their hideout to arrest them all.
Yeah, they got them all.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh.
So we shall see how it all ends. But yeah, so I mean, there were
that was a little bit more exciting, those last 2 episodes, weren't they, compared to the whole season?
Yeah. Points of it were exciting, but there were also, I just felt I wasn't watching it with the same level of enthusiasm as I have previously.
No.
But hopefully...
as soon as it's done, the quicker.
Well, no, well, I'm hoping that this last episode will end on a high note, and then it will be exciting.
Really exciting last season.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope so, because it has been going a long time.
Yeah. It needs to, for the sake of its legacy, I think it deserves to go out on a high.
Yeah.
Because
it's been around longer than the other ones, hasn't it? So it's got to not finish stupidly.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't be all flashy back bits. We'll have it a bit more, you can understand what's going on. Yeah.
Right, okay, so Legends of Tomorrow. So
yes, another one.
Now this is one that we are even more just going to bullet point the highlights, because we haven't actually had the opportunity to chat in the podcast at all about Legends since it came back. We did try on our failed podcast where everything went wrong and we had to scrap it. But other than that, we haven't actually had a conversation about Legends. So I think us going into depth with it is a bit counterproductive. So if we just hit the highlights. So it came back. We had a luchador themed episode where they were in Mexico. There was a wrestler who clearly was based on an actual legendary Mexican wrestler / film star, El Santo, I think. But in this, he was called El Cura.
Yes.
And they had the werewolf guy was there in that time, and he was acting as a wrestler. The Time Bureau was trying to get him. Mona was blamed for it, so she had to go on the run and join the Legends. They found him. Prevented the Time Bureau from capturing him, but then Mona got scratched or something a while back, and when they killed the werewolf guy, it triggered something in her, and she turned into like a werewolf herself.
Some monster thing as well,
and she killed the time agents, and then that was the end of that. You had
also we had Nate. Nate had been looking into his dad.
Yeah.
Because he knows his dad is up to something, so that was going on in the meantime, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He realised his dad is behind something to do with the creatures. They found out he was torturing. Well, it appeared he was torturing the creatures.
Yeah.
And obviously Mona at the time had been blamed for it all, but they realised it was his dad.
So they used the next mission to try and resolve that, because that was I really enjoyed that episode. But they went back to the 70s, and it was all to do with Richard Nixon, and Nate teamed up with Hank with his dad to try and get information out of him, but also act like he was working with him. But at the same time, there was part of Nate that enjoyed teaming up with his dad, because he's always had this kind of strained relationship, even though he's always wanted a close one. And you had this weird truth-telling bug thing that
Oh
went into
dear.
people. And so you got lots of funny little bits where the legends were revealing secrets to each other about how they fell, or secrets they were keeping and stuff like that. And it was just really funny. And they went on this little road trip. They kidnapped Richard Nixon, and they were trying to save his life and obviously make sure that he didn't tell the truth, because it would have changed the course of
History.
history. So you had all that, and in the meantime, you had Hank and Nate acting as if they were trying to track them down, but Zari was working at a pretend radio station where she was giving them hints. Hank then became aware of what was going on, and then, yeah, that sort of caused a bit of a division between him and Nate. But then he eventually he came through for them and realized that Nate, Nate's on the right track, and that he promised to trust the legends from now on, and was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll work with you, and we won't let the legends won't be fugitives anymore. But then when Hank returned to the present time, he was trying to cut off his ties with Desmond, or Neron, who he'd been working with for this project to do with the magical creatures. And he was basically like, nope, not going to happen. I'm done with you now. You've served your purpose. You're no longer any use to me. And he killed him.
Yeah.
And you had Nora. She could sense all of this because of her magical demonic
Yeah,
powers.
she grabbed the cage they put her in, didn't she? Because she was trying to save him. She sensed Nero was around again.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh no, got to get to save. And then she was caught in the room, wasn't she?
And then it looked like
So they
she was
thought,
the one that had killed him. So
yeah,
she had to run away. So then the next one, they went to. This was again really cool, this episode, where they got an alert from a time in the past, because Mona had a T-shirt on that had all these people on it, all these names, and they were all characters from Jane Austen book, and they were
yeah.
starting to disappear. And she's like, "Oh no! If they're starting to disappear, that means these characters were never created." So then they got the alert, and it was like, from the time of Jane Austen, there was a magical creature. So the girls all saddle up and go back to the past. And in the meantime, you've got all this struggle going on with Zari, where she's got feelings for Nate, but she doesn't want to express them. And they're like, oh, you need to get out your system. And so she meets this handsome Indian coach driver, who she's like, oh, and they're all like making joke, going, oh, you should knock boots with him, and just, doesn't have to mean anything, just, get it out your system, and then you'll feel better, and all this stuff. Then they went to this really bizarre wedding, where the wedding all just went to pot, and everybody was like revealing, I'm in love with the maid, and that's fine because I'm in love with your mother, and all of this stuff. And they're like, what is going on here? And Sarah's just sat there with a big grin on her face going, this is my kind of wedding. And everyone's copping off with each other. That was so funny. But then they're like,
that was a Bollywood one, wasn't it?
yes, because then they were like, what's going on here? And so they discovered the magical creature was actually the Hindu god Kamadeva. So they're like, oh, this Indian coach driver is actually this god. So they're trying to take him down. But then Zari got enamored with him. And then it turns out he's using his powers. And you had this whole cool bit where she sort of went with it and fell in love with him. And they had this whirlwind romance, which, yeah, like you said, led to this really cool Bollywood musical number, which was amazing. And I was just like,
brilliant,
I love this. I love this program so much. This program should never change, and I want it to run forever, and I want to carry on doing these bonkers things, because it's just brilliant. And just seeing them all.
Well, that's what we used to expect of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all like, yes, it's back. Finally.
It was brilliant, and it was just like, it was proper Legends of Tomorrow, and everybody was in Indian clothes, and they were all doing dancing, and everyone was singing, and they're like, wait, why am I singing? And like Mona showed up, and she's like, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like I want to sing, and all of this lot. Oh, it was great. But then they eventually realized, no, it's not real, it's magic, and we need to stop this. And then it turned out the guy wasn't really Kamadeva. He had found the locket and the ashes, and since he'd been using it, it had allowed him to live a longer life. It had allowed him to have like millions of wives and things like this. And they're like, okay, yeah, you're a bit of a fraud, mate. In between all of that, you also had Hank's wake, and
yes.
Nate was struggling with all of that and about his feelings about his father, and feeling like he'd been doing all these bad things. But then he discovered like his secret recordings Oh, and it was so sad because his dad
Hmm.
was just as goofy as Nate can be when Nate's with Ray, and he's like,
Yeah.
my son, I never had enough time for him, but I always kept his paintings, and I've now got this opportunity to make his imagination come to life, and I'm creating a theme park that's going to have all
Yeah.
these magical creatures in it. And it was like, he wasn't doing something bad at all. He was trying to
No.
do something good, and he was trying to do something to show how much he loved his son, and it was like, oh, that was so sad.
Yeah, because it was the Disneyland he never got to go to because he'd been ill or something.
Yeah,
So he
that's right.
based on his childhood drawings.
Yeah. So they were trying to do a seance to try and communicate because
Oh,
Constantine
that
was like, oh, his
yeah.
spirit's still
He was
here.
Mick, didn't he?
Yeah. That was really funny. And then Mick took on the characteristics of his dad and stuff like that. And he told Constantine the truth and said, I was tricked, I was foolish. I ended up working with Neron, but then Neron appeared and he was basically like, oh, there's nothing you can do, Johnny. And he's taunting him by wearing Desmond's face, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna enjoy this because you deserve damnation and all of this lot. So then you got Nate and Ray went off and they found this theme park and they saw all this stuff and it was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. Nate was going to get it destroyed, but then he changed his mind. Ava got kidnapped by Neron. So then they were like, why does he want her? And it's like, oh, he wants a body for a girl that he's trying to summon from hell to put her in this body, and he needs this vessel so that he can do that. So then they had this thing where they were like, we need a magical thing because at the moment when Neron's preparing the body, he has to remove the soul of the other person and send it to purgatory. So the purgatory she'd been sent to was like IKEA.
Yeah.
And so
Oh, no.
Sarah went in to try and help her, and they were stuck in IKEA, and they had to build a bed, and they had to find wardrobes, and all of this kind of stuff. And Gary was there, and in the real world, Gary showed up, and he's like, but I love her, she's my best friend, I have to help. And so he was like in the middle, and then there was a Gary in the purgatory world, and they kept talking about, you have to hurry, because we're going to be closing soon, and she's going to show up, and if she shows up while you're still here, that's not going to be good. And so they're racing against time because they're like, this Tabitha person is going to turn up, and if she arrives, then that means Ava is gone. And so Ava and Sarah had to solve all of these puzzles that were to do with their relationship and their hang-ups, trying to find a reason, like an anchor point to drag Ava back from purgatory back into the physical world. Then they captured Neron, didn't they? And
Nero.
no, Neron.
Oh, that was Nero.
No,
Neron.
Neron. Nero is the emperor from ancient Rome. They got Neron and they had him in like a magical stasis thing, and he was like kept taunting Constantine and Nora. And then you thought like Nora had gone to the dark side because she turned the cameras off and went in to speak to him. And it's like, oh, I'm going to help you. And then it was really a ploy, but stupid Ray didn't realize what was going on, and he ran in to try and help, but he ended up getting zapped, and the spell went wrong, and the essence left the body of Neron, the Desmond body. But then it was like, oh, Nora destroyed Neron because she blasted him. Ray got blasted across the room, and then Nora got knocked unconscious. Then Desmond woke up, and then Constantine had to confront him about what had happened and about sending him to hell. And he's like, I understand what you were doing, Johnny, and I'm grateful that you saved me, but I can't forgive you. You sent me to hell, and you don't know what it was like there. You don't know what I had to put up with. And so he left Constantine, so Constantine was heartbroken, and then Nora was in like a coma, and Ray left the building, and while he was leaving, because earlier on you'd had the bit where Neron was humming a tune or something, or whistling something, I can't remember what the tune was now, but then
It's Whistle While You Work, was it?
something like that. And then Ray left the building and he stopped to tie up his shoelace, and then he started whistling the tune, and then it's like, oh, Neron wasn't destroyed, he went into Ray's body. So it's like, oh dear. So then you had, bringing us almost up to date, we're getting closing in, Sarah working on trying to get Nate and Zari to admit their feelings to each other, and they had the whole weird bit with the Oh, you had the whole thing with the emoji thing where they got really confusing, and it was like, why am I sending all these emojis? I don't even understand what this message means now. Because
Mm.
you were like, eggplant, smiley face, this, that, and the other. And she was like, just send her a message. And so she did send a message to say how she felt. But then she was like, oh, no, I can't. I got to back out. So she got rid of the message. But they were like, this is ridiculous. So they sent them back. And it was like Indiana Jones, wasn't it? It was like this place called the Adventure Society who had discovered a magical golden egg. So Zara and Nate got sent back, and it was like Indiana Jones, because it was like,
Mm.
I'm sure his name was Henry Jones, and he was like, hey, they're using my favorite movie, and there was this Adventure Society who were these like adventurer, historian, archaeologists, and then the Nazis showed up, so it really was like a scene from Indiana Jones, and they were after the egg. Ava and Sarah join the mission, and they get the egg and bring it to the Wave Rider. And then when they examined the egg, it turned out, what did it have in it?
A dragon.
A dragon. So they have a dragon egg.
And also in that episode,
Yep.
we had first a little bit funny. Laundry Mick, hiding his fan mail from his book from it that he got from and his name is Rebecca Silver.
Yes.
So him and Charlie went to a romantic com, is it called?
Yes, it was a convention for people that like romance novels. And
if they wanted to win lots of money or something, there was something about money. So she goes, well, I'll have to be, I'm Rebecca, so I'll be Rebecca. Because she knew nothing about Rebecca, she had to get all this information from Mick. And so she was like talking like, it was, what was it called where they talked, what do they call it when they meet and greet sort of thing with the author?
Yeah,
they said to it
it's
earlier on.
Exactly that. It's a meet and greet. Yeah.
Yeah, so they'd gone off and done some research. So she's chattering away about the books, and then meanwhile the girls back at the ship, before they went on this rampage for the egg, had been doing this book club thing where they were sitting with Nora, who's in a coma, doing this book club. Sarah's doing all the reading. She turns up. Mona goes, I gotta go. There's this romantic com. It's my favourite author. Leaves them and goes to Sharp. Right then, about this book. She goes, well, I didn't read it.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't long after that they got called away. So then Mona turns up at the romantic com, doing all right, exposes Charlie as not the real person. And basically Mick had to take the microphone, didn't he?
And then he revealed, because what was it? The question, she didn't answer it properly. Somebody in the audience wasn't happy with the answer, and they were like, that doesn't sound like the Rebecca Silver that we know, and all this art. And then he'd had enough, and he was like, you're right. No, what you would say is this. And he gave this big speech, and then they were like, oh,
so funny.
You're Rebecca Silver. And he's like, yes, I'm Rebecca Silver.
It's so funny, wasn't it? Because obviously he started this novel like series ago, didn't he?
Yep.
Or it's writing, and the fact that he called himself Rebecca Silver, so that was hilarious. And also, we had the bit when Nero took over Ray totally.
Yep.
Gary gave into the third nipple.
Well, yeah, Neron tried to get Ray to kill Nora, and then also tried to get him to kill Nate. Constantine used magic to wake up Nora, and they found out, obviously, the truth about Neron controlling Ray. And then he basically kidnapped Ray's body, gave this, because Gary was feeling a bit like left out from everything, and Neron used trickery and gave him back his nipple. And he was then being controlled by Neron, so he was like a puppet. And then Neron teleported them away, and Constantine went with them. And then they're like, right, now our new mission is we've got to try and track down where they've gone, save Ray, stop Neron, and obviously, get back Constantine as well.
So it's like, oh, can't wait to the next episode.
So then the next episode...
But I haven't seen the next episode.
Yeah, you have.
No, I haven't.
The next episode where it picks up with Gary doing the performance reviews.
No, I haven't seen that one. That's what I was trying to say to you.
Oh, so you've got two to watch then. You've got last week's, and then you'll have this week's to watch.
I got to the dragon egg, and that was my last one I watched.
Ah, right, okay. In which case, then, that'll do it for Legends of Tomorrow. So, when we discuss...
No spoilers!
On Sunday's podcast, we'll do a double header of Legends. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on then, swiftly moving on to the final part of this segment, which is the Flash. Again, like, the Flash has been pretty good. There's been lots of exciting stuff going on. The last episode that we discussed about the Flash on the last podcast was...
It was the aftershock of finding out about Nora.
Yes, was it called Time Bomb?
Godspeed.
Yes, that's the one we haven't... Yeah, so Godspeed. So basically, I was really disappointed with this episode because in the comics, Godspeed was introduced a little while back and he's another big villain. He's a big... Like we've had with Thorn and with Zoom and all of these other speedsters, but Godspeed is like the ultimate speedster. He's like worse than ever. And basically what he does is he siphons energy from other speedsters, which then allows him to become more powerful, and he can, not only can he run fast, he can rip holes in reality, he can, do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So
but they didn't do that.
He brought in this character, so you have the whole thing where they obviously were deciphering Nora's journal and discovering this thing where they were like, Nora in the future, and it's like following her, and she's finding all this weird stuff, and she's like, this lightning, but this lightning doesn't exist because there's this color lightning and there's this color lightning, but there's not this color lightning. And then they discover that there's this new speedster, and he's called Godspeed, and during an encounter, he hit her with lightning, and the chip that she had implanted in her to dampen her powers got short-circuited, so her powers came to the forefront. Her friend that she worked with was then trying to help her. Nora got a bit carried away of I can be the Flash now, but she was really awful. And she was, causing all these terrible things to happen.
She caused more trouble than she started, didn't she?
Yeah, which ultimately
all the criminals got well.
It ultimately led to her friend being killed because of her recklessness by Godspeed. And she then felt really, really guilty, and she's like, I need someone to help me, to train me. So then that's why she turned to Thorn.
Thorn, yeah.
She went to speak to him initially to try and decipher stuff, and then he basically agreed that he would help her in the same way that he did with Barry. And that's why she ended up working with him. And then it's like, okay, so it was more out of necessity than out of want. So that was our backstory as to why was Nora working with Thorn.
Yeah.
Iris released Nora because she was like, anything you've done, I can't believe you wouldn't have done it without good reason. Us, we've all done things that have sort of come back to us. Yes, you should have told us stuff, but, I don't think you're a bad person. So then Barry got annoyed by this when he discovered this, and he was like, no, I got to deal with this once and for all. So he took her into the future, and he was like, this is it. You stay here now. You got to stay here, and that's, if you come back in time, I'm going to know, and I'll just bring you back again. And then he quickly stops off to see Thorn, and Thorn's just like, we meet again, Flash, kind of thing. And then he's like, basically, I'm glad you're going to get executed. I've got no remorse, so I don't care. You did all this. This is all your fault. And then he leaves him there. Then that led into Barry and Iris falling out because of his decision and that he'd never consulted anybody. So all the way through the episode, there was all this up and down between them. The other story in that was Thorn.
Thorn said he was going to show how to sneak into the Speed Force.
Yeah, he said,
seen like he did.
I've developed another way. I developed a different way. And this is something, again, from the comics, which is called the negative Speed Force, which you use negative emotions and use that in conjunction with your speed to open up time tunnels that will go undetected. So he teaches her how to do this and give in to your hate sort of thing so that she can travel back in time and nobody will know.
Yeah.
She tried it. It didn't work. But then Nora travelled into the future because she was like, Iris travelled into the future.
So you got to talk about that better than that. She used the time pod.
Yes,
with Ralph helping her.
Yeah, Ralph helped her.
And when it took off, he squeezed because he's elongated, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he just squashed into it.
Yeah, he was just like up against the glass. He was like those like the Garfields and stuff that you stick on the side of your window in a car. He was just like up against the side of this pod. And then when they went into the future, because Ralph can obviously take on other people's faces, they took
Yeah.
out the mean guard, and Ralph replaced him, so that then Iris could go in. She went in. Nora was in there too. She spoke to both of them. She spoke to Thorne. She's like, "Look, I don't like you. You don't like me, but this is my daughter. Blah blah blah." And then he's like, "Oh well, I did this thing, and I've taught her another way, and all this lot." And then Nora got really angry, and as a result, she was able to do the negative speed
Use the
force
negative.
thing.
Yeah.
Thorne was then like, "This is wrong. You need to get back. You need to reunite your family and stuff. That you need to stop her because I'm worried." So she went off. Then you had the whole thing to do with the Snow family. So yeah,
The snow fight.
her dad returned and stole this thing from the mum's laboratory. He then kidnapped Caitlin and the mum, and it turned out his plan was he was basically going to try and reunite his family, but by making them like him. That then led to a big fight thing. He tried to kill Caitlin. The dad somehow resurfaced and stopped it from happening, and that was the end of that. But the mother, something happened with the mother, and I'm now worried that maybe in the future she may...
Well, yeah, because she did a test on her, and she goes, "No, if it turns green, didn't she say you've got something in you, and if it's white, you're fine."
Yeah.
And she goes, "It's white," and then they showed it in the box, and it started changing, didn't it?
Yeah.
So now she's probably turned into a meta.
And the dad showed up. The dad saved the day because Cicada showed up, and he ended up sacrificing himself. So that was quite sad. So he's dead and gone now.
He finally is dead now, I think. And
then Barry basically had a chat with Joe and stuff like he does, and then he had some humility, and he spoke to Iris and agreed we need to work together and be on the same page to help Nora. And then Nora showed back up again, and she had glowing red eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So then we go on to, then Nora basically formed her own little team. She got a whole bunch of villains. So she got the Weather Witch, she got the...
Ragdoll.
Yeah, the creepy Ragdoll. I don't like that one, that's really creepy. And then was it the girl that, the bees? The girl from The Walking Dead?
Yeah.
What's her name? What did Cisco call her? The Bug-Eyed Bandit?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so she puts together this little team, and she's like, I need your help, and this thing that she needs to plan a heist because she has to get something from this laboratory.
She kidnapped Cisco and
Shirley. Yeah.
To hack into a phone.
Oh, and that was so funny when Sherlock was pretending to be the Flash.
Yeah.
When he was using the hologram, and he's like kind of going, oh, but but it was so funny because it was obvious that it wasn't really the Flash just by the way he was acting.
Yes.
That was really funny. But yeah, she kidnapped them. She threatened to kill Cisco. So he was like, okay, yeah, I'll help you. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, that was like, oh dear. So it's like, oh, she's going full on villain. But then it turned out that her plan wasn't actually a bad plan. It was again trying to help her father because she'd had to do this mission to try and steal this stuff so that she could create a method to stop Cicada and destroy the dagger.
Yeah, like a secret mission, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To get the tech.
But then the baddies turned on her because it was oh yeah, well, we're real baddies and we were just using you. So they turned on her, but then luckily Barry and stuff came and they all saved the day, and they locked up all the baddies and reunited with Nora, and they discovered that the cure thing, that basically Cicada could use the cure to use it as a weapon, using the thing that Thomas Snow had stolen, the, what was it, cryoatomizer or something. She could disperse this cure across the city, but it would like kill all the metahumans. It wouldn't cure them. And then it showed her working on that, and she started seeing visions of her uncle, of the original Cicada, so she's going a bit nuts because she's like seeing him appearing
talking
to her,
with her, yeah.
And it's like she's not really there. And she also kidnapped the younger version of herself from the hospital.
Yeah, the poor good little girl's there as well now, isn't she?
Yeah.
There was also a funny moment in there.
Yeah.
Frost and Dibney.
Remind me.
Well, they were talking, and it was almost like they were chatting each other up, and then she thought he fancied her, and he goes, "But you're not my type."
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
It was quite funny, but that was earlier on.
Yeah. So then we had So then you've
I
seen
haven't seen the next one.
Oh, you haven't seen the next one or the last one?
No.
So you're one behind on The Flash as well.
Yes, I did say to you before we did this
Sorry, I forgot.
earlier.
Okay, so yeah, okay, so the next one is called The Girl with Red Lightnings. We'll talk about that one then on the next podcast. So there we go.
Sorry, viewers,
I
listeners.
thought you were completely up to date with some of them.
I did tell Mr. Geek-Dom this right before we started. We'll have to include the last week's with next week's or however way it works. And he said that's fine, and then he nearly forgot.
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. Right, okay, so that's going to do it for our roundup of the
practice,
Arrowverse.
you see.
Yeah, it's a bit, forgive me, listeners, for being a little bit rusty. I'm just working out the kinks, I'm getting warmed up again. Right, okay, so we finished with our superhero world, so we're going to move on to the final part of this catch-up roundup podcast, and this is to discuss the finale of the Orville, which was absolutely amazing. This is going to be a good one because it was a very good ending. And I can just tell you, going in just before we start it, the news broke a couple of days ago because I saw a very swearing, heavy, exuberant tweet from Seth MacFarlane because they got the news that it's been renewed for season 3.
Yeah!
So yeah, his tweet was full of swear words because he was so happy about the fact
that I'm not surprised
they'd been renewed. So yeah, I think we all saw it coming.
Yeah.
It was definitely good. But yeah, so we're going to get into talking about that. So we had, again, a few episodes that we missed out because of the gap in recording podcasts. So we had one which was all based around the Mocklans, Bortus's people. And it was basically to do with the fact that there was a secret colony of females. Because you had this whole thing that kicked off again because Bortus's son was acting out a little bit in class and being a bit mean about girls. And yeah.
Right. Basically, in this episode, they had to take some Mocklers onto their ship. They had to take them to another place. They were getting some high-tech guns delivered, and the Orville had been upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it started. Then we had the bit about Bortus's son being naughty in class against the females.
Right. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, that's fine. I was going to mention those other Mocklans, but it's all right.
Let's start at the beginning.
So, yeah, so you had the son was acting out and being quite sort of, misogynistic and sexist and stuff. And it turned out that was coming from the husband or the partner, the whatever he is.
Annoying one.
And it's like, well, we have to teach him our ways. And he's like, being on the Orville has not taught you anything and you've not learned. And he's like, well, this is still our traditions and stuff. And Bortus clearly didn't agree with it. So there was that issue there. And then they discovered all this stuff to do with these two Mocklans that had come aboard. There was a unusual power drain. So he was sent to check it out. And they'd got this box, because when they got on board and they got in their room, they were a little bit suspicious, and they had this case, and it's like, oh, what are they up to? It turns out the case was what was drawing extra power, and Bortus forced them to open it, and inside was a baby, a female baby. And then they're like, it was like, oh, bless. And then obviously he was sympathetic because of his stance on everything. And they were like, we don't want her to be changed, so we're going somewhere to get away from it. And they made out like they were transferring to a different ship that was going to allow them to live, away from all of this and stuff like that. So that was that. So Bortus agreed to keep it a secret. Then they did the transfer and they went off to the other ship. But then they started being suspicious about some of the stuff. And it turned out that, they discovered the fact that they had something on board. And then Bortus revealed the truth. They then discovered the ship wasn't going where they thought it was supposed to be going. So then they were like, oh, they could be up to no good here. Maybe they've kidnapped the child or something. So they followed them, and they eventually led them to this place, this planet, that was hidden within a nebula. And it was a world that, basically, it was all females. So it turned out, we then got this character who was in the first season, who was like a famous author on Mocklus, but nobody ever knew it was a woman because she lived like in a cave in isolation. She was instrumental in this colony, and they'd basically been smuggling baby girls off of Mocklus and away to this sanctuary planet for a long, long time, and they wanted just to live in peace.
Can I interject there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you missed a little bit,
Oh,
because you
okay.
said about, Portis's son being naughty in class. He found out about the baby. He brought the son to see the baby. He explained about the baby and told him not to tell anyone. And he told, what was his wife thing, and who told Ed. That's how they found out about the baby.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so he thought
Yeah.
that it would be like a learning experience for his son by taking him to see the baby, but then the son couldn't keep the secret, and then he was like, that's how it all came out. Yeah, that's right. But then the husband, like, he having his, strong Moclan beliefs, he's like, well, they need to know the truth. We need to let Mocklus know that this is going on, because they are breaking the rules and they shouldn't be doing this, and they should be, Mocklus should be informed that this is happening. So they were like, well, if we get uncovered, they're basically going to take us all away. They're going to arrest us. They're going to force people into this gender reassignment thing and stuff like that. So they decided to take it to the Union to try and get would basically try and get the planet recognized in its own right as a separate entity from Mocklus. And you had the really funny thing where the old woman was in the ship with Ed, and he was trying to find music to pass the time, and they had Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 song, and she was like, the lyrics speak to me. This woman, this will be the anthem of our uprising and all of this stuff.
She is
and
the
it was
hero.
so funny. Yeah. And then later on, you had this really funny thing, because when the talks broke down and the Mocklans decided, no, this is wrong, we're going against the Union needs us because we provide them with weapons, so we're just going to send our troops in anyway. And when the whole fight sequence was going on the planet, you had Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 playing while they were having this uprising.
Because they told the chief of security woman to fire on the ships.
Yeah.
And so while all this really good special effects, might I add, going on, they had this 9 to 5 music playing. It was so funny.
Because you also had the bit, because obviously when it started breaking down in the talks, Admiral Halsey was chatting to Ed, and he basically said, he basically told him to send a message, but I didn't tell you that kind of thing. It was like a nudge, nudge, wink, wink sort of thing. So that's how the Orville knew what the Mocklans were planning. So then they were like, yeah, we'll fire on the ship. We'll send Bortus and Kelly down to the planet. So then they were fighting against the Mocklans to try and save the women. And then the women were fighting as well. And there was this girl, when they'd first arrived there was this young girl who'd waved and said hi to Bortus. She was being chased. He broke off. He saved her. And yeah, you just had this backwards and forwards fighting. And they then basically decided on a compromise, which was that the Union wouldn't allow their membership for the time being, and that the Mocklans would leave them alone, provided the colonists stopped the human trafficking operation from now on. So, although it wasn't the best compromise, it was a compromise nonetheless, which meant that they could continue living on their planet. They can't bring any more children there anymore, unfortunately, but hopefully it'd be the beginnings of something.
And Dolly Parton would be proud.
And Dolly Parton would be proud, indeed. So that was just great. But yeah, it was a really clever episode, and it may be something that comes up again in the future, hence the reason we just discussed it in a little bit more depth than maybe we should have done.
The way I look at it as well, it's like reality, isn't it? The way he throws things in, obviously, it's they're aliens, but it's like reality, like with same sex and all this and da-da-da. And there's things probably happen in some religions. So he sort of used his knowledge of what he's that's probably going on in the real world to throw it into a program like that. Or we might not got that message. Someone out go, whoa, that is how my life's like, or our lives are like.
Well, it's like the practice in some countries where they do forced genital mutilation and things like that.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So it's like he's used something that really happens. Put it into a program, make it a bit more light-hearted, but it gets a message across.
Not necessarily light-hearted. He just made it a bit more fantastical.
You know what I mean, though, don't you?
Yeah. So anyway,
that's what I like about his things.
Moving on. So then the next episode. So again, we won't go into depth. We'll just talk about the important bullet points. Kelly and Ed talking about their first date, where things went wrong, what could have happened, things like that. Meanwhile, Isaac, who's returned for the first time in ages since all that,
Yes.
since the double header,
Past. Yeah.
they're experimenting with this sort of time travel device that him and Lamar had
John.
been fiddling around with. Kelly goes in, see how they're going and stuff like that. Then they get hit by like a gravitational wave, and it's like, oh dear, something's happened. But then Kelly leaves, goes to the bridge, but then Kelly's there in the room still, and Isaac's like, but you just let, and then it's like, wait, she looks different, she's younger.
Well, wearing so different.
Yeah, and it turns out, long and the short of it is, it's Kelly from 7 years ago that has somehow been transported to this place in time from the past. And it also, as the episode goes on, it turns out it's Kelly from the day after her first date with Ed. That's this version of Kelly. So then you have this whole thing about how the two Kellys have got to try and coexist. They don't know how they could get her back to her own time, so it's like, well, you're going to have to live here now. So they give her an assignment on the ship. She then starts making friends with the crew, which annoys Kelly a little bit, because she's
Telling
like,
secrets of her past.
these people are under my command, and it's like fraternizing with them and revealing personal details undermines my authority because we are the same person. And then the younger one had been putting up with a bit of scolding from the older version, but then she snapped and she's like, I don't want to listen to you anymore because you ruined our life. And she's like, all the things that we set out to do, none of them have been achieved. You wanted to be a captain. That hasn't happened. You wanted to have a family. That hasn't happened. It was like basically all of our shared dreams, you didn't make them happen. So why should I listen to you, sort of thing. In the meantime, Ed is kind of thinking, but going back to the beginning of like, what ifs, he then starts getting a bit involved with this younger version of Kelly, asks the older version, do you mind if I date her? Which was kind of weird. So he decides to go down that route, and it starts out fine, but as time goes by, you realise, yeah, it's not the same person. There's a 7-year difference. He's 7 years older.
Well, she does a simulation of a nightclub.
Yeah, that's right.
And he sat with Gordon going, this is awful. Oh, this music, it's doing my nut in.
Yeah.
But then when she confronts him about it later, he goes, yeah, it's cool, loved it. But it's like, I'm too old. It's not the sort of thing I want to do, sort of thing. So I'm thinking, I don't think this is going to work.
Bortus and his husband really enjoyed it, though.
Oh, and the outfit.
Yeah, and the outfit, and the security officer.
Yeah.
Who became the young Kelly's best friend. But yeah, so that was all the light-hearted stuff. And then the Kalon reappeared, so they were like, we have to do something. So they came up with a plan where they hid inside this ice, like an ice planet, sort of in the outside of the planet, so they wouldn't get detected.
That was so clever.
That was
again a bit of the special effects, wasn't it?
There was something even cleverer than that, though, in the next episode. But anyway,
but that's dying for you to watch.
That was really, really clever. They then, in the meantime, they'd been working on ways, even though this young Kelly had settled into life on the Orville, she still felt out of place. Lamar and Isaac were still trying to work on a way to return her home, and they worked it out. So then they were like, well, look, we need to do something because we need to protect time, so you can't know about these experiences. So they give her this injection, and they do this stuff to wipe her mind. Then they make the device work, and they send her back in time. So it then shows that younger Kelly, and she wakes up, and it's the day after her first date with Ed, and she's back in the right place and everything like that. And then Ed calls her early morning, as we'd heard in the story. He phoned her first thing, start of the day, and he said, oh, I had a really great time last night, and basically call in to see if you'd like to go out again. And she turns around and says no. And it's like, wait, what? That's not meant to happen.
She just changed the timeline.
So then we go on to the finale.
Yes.
The road not taken. So I already had speculation going in, because after that had ended, I was like, what does this mean for next week? What does this mean for finale? Is it going to be a new timeline? Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? So we go in.
Right, so it started with two guys in the snow, rushing in the snow with weird masks on.
Yep.
Looking for something at the Union listening post. And it obviously looked like a microwave. So
yeah.
The Kalons are shooting at them while they're trying to get from there back to where their pod is.
Yeah.
And it turns out the masks come off. It's Ed and Ginger, I put, obviously Gordon. Wow, the special effects in the ice mean were brilliant. Yes,
Previous
it was.
episode.
No, there was things on there. There was when they were chasing them, when they
Oh,
were
yes,
shooting
yeah,
at
the
them.
bit when they
They
were
got to
then
their
being
pods.
chased, and they went through all those
So
caverns and stuff, and they
yeah,
caused the cave
yeah,
in.
yeah. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And then it got to, and it was the food thing. They can make food. They love. You know, the synthesizer
Replicator,
thing.
yeah.
What are you gonna get? Oh, I'm gonna get a
Twinkie.
what's it called? Twinkie. All that hassle to get a microwave or whatever it was, just so they could eat something.
Yep. So then
Wow.
you're going, well, this is a bit strange because the Kalon are out and about again because obviously they've been quiet for a little while, apart from that bit in the previous episode.
Yeah.
But the Kalon are out and about in force. These two are on their own in a pod. How did they get here? Why aren't they with
Yeah.
everybody else? Where is
And they looked a
everybody
bit
else?
weird, didn't they? They looked a bit rugged and
Yeah. So then they realise it's safe to go, so they head out, and they then get a big ship turns up, a really
and they
big
said, "Oh,
ship.
as scavengers." What did they say? He said the scavengers they wear you like skin or something. I can't remember what he said because that's what they thought. They were getting pulled in by some scavengers.
Yeah, like space pirates almost.
Yeah.
So then it turns out the ship they've been captured by is actually piloted by Kelly
And the gang.
and Bortus. No, sorry, not Bortus. Kelly and everybody apart from Isaac and Bortus. And then she then basically explains what's happened. So she explains to Ed, but she also explains for us sitting at home. And so she says, basically, there was another me. Another me came into our time, and then when that other me went back in time, the procedure did on her didn't work. She made a different decision because she's like, do you remember the date we went on? And he's like, yeah, and you told me you didn't want to see me again and stuff. And she's like, that's not meant to have happened. We were supposed to have gone on dates, got married, ended up on the Orville together. And he's like, what? I was a
You couldn't believe
captain
he'd
of a
ever been on the
starship.
Orville.
And she's like, yep, and I was your second in command. And basically, all the things that should have happened, and like the Kalon, we successfully pushed them back and we united loads of races and all of this up. But none of that happened because of this decision.
What she did afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, and she's like, and as a result, the Kalon have been able to do what they wanted to do. They've gone out and they've wiped out loads of life in the galaxy. They completely destroyed Earth. They've, they're just in control now. So I'm sat here watching it and I'm going, wait, so basically it's gone from Star Trek inspired. This episode was very much like Star Wars. So, because you had the whole bit with who are these people on an ice planet? Then you get the reveal, oh, it's our heroes. Then you get all of the stuff where they went to that listening post and it was in a forest, like a forest planet. And it was like, oh, that's very like Star Wars as well, when the rebels go to Endor in Return of the Jedi. And all these kind of things that in this episode reminded me so much of Star Wars. I thought it's clever in a way because I wonder, now I've got nothing to base this on, but I wonder if this was done on purpose because he's going, right, the show itself is very much a template based on Star Trek. We are doing an alternate reality timeline. Which
so I can use Star Wars.
Yeah,
in this one.
we can use a different thing for the basis of this one, which is kind of how it seemed. It seemed very Star Wars-esque.
Yes.
So she revealed all the truth to him and said, look, we need to make this right. In order to make this right, we need to do this thing and this thing and this thing.
And you need to get a protein or something to do the memory wipe properly.
Yes, they also needed to get the research data from the Orville because Isaac would still have done the time travel research because if he hadn't done, the younger her wouldn't have been able to travel backwards and forwards in time. So they know that's there. So we've got to get that. We've got to get this protein. We've got to put it all together. And also Claire was there, the doctor, and she was like, after Kelly brought me up to speed on all this, I've worked out she's got a complex something in her DNA, which meant that she was kind of resistant to this. So we need to add another ingredient, which means that it will actually work this time.
Yeah.
So they then set out on their missions to try and do all this. And they
John taking the lead, he said, I know exactly where to go. And they found this bunker.
Which was like the forest planet, yeah.
Yeah, which Yarfit.
Yeah, he like answered the door. Which again reminded me of Star Wars, because there's the bit when Luke Skywalker goes to Jabba the Hutt's palace, you get the
Mm.
big doors and a circular bit opens and a weird thing comes out and kind of scans them and stuff. And I was like, again, it's almost like it's lifted straight from Star Wars. It was brilliant. So they get
And the head of the bunker was the girl that
was
used to be the head of the
Alara,
security.
Alara,
Yeah.
the original science officer. So that was amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a history between her and John because they're like, oh, it's been a while since I've seen you and all this kind of stuff.
Mm.
And she agrees, like, okay, they don't really tell her what they need it for, but they're like, basically this will be a way to help defeat the Kalon. If you give us this, we've got a method, but we can't really explain it to you. And she's like, okay, well, I'll trust you because it's you. So she gives them that, and it's like, right, we've got this. And then the Kalon show up and start bombing the place. So they're like, we need to escape. So they get out of there. And then they then realize, like, we need the Orville. Well, the Orville was last at Earth.
First of all,
Did it happen at this point, or was it when they got the Orville?
when they got in the shuttle, they realised one of those Kalons was in there,
Yeah.
which they had to kill,
Yeah.
which they would use at a later date.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were fighting. There were so many of those head rocket things that come off the Kalons.
Yeah.
They had to go into a black hole.
This bit was the bit I'm on about that was amazing, where they were like, there's a black hole, and if we go into just the the event horizon,
Horizon, yeah.
we can sit there and we'll be obscured from the outside. So we can hide in there until they go. And then you had this awesome bit because one, you got, wow, look at this kaleidoscope of colour and stuff inside the black hole. But then you had the bit from the outside where they were watching the Kalon ship, scanning for them. And it was like time lapse, wasn't it? Because it was like sped up.
Yeah, they were there 2 days.
When they came out, they discovered that 2 days had passed. Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
But that bit was amazing. I was just like, this is so awesome. So yeah,
and then they
was
said
really
they were
good.
ahead to Earth because they realised that the ship was in the sea.
It was at the very bottom of the Marianas Trench.
That's it. Well, they said Pacific Ocean, then they realised it was Mariana Trench.
So they go, right, so how are we going to get it, though? Because we're in a shuttle, and they're like, well, if we bolster this and that, we can create, a shield which should be able to withstand the pressure. That will mean that we won't all get crushed to death going down there. What I thought was funny was, like, at the time, I was like, why did they all have to go in the shuttle? That seems a bit silly.
Kids and all.
Yeah, kids and all. It's like, why is everybody crammed in there?
Before that, the reason they found it was at the bottom of the sea was because the Kalon that he killed, he said they're all connected. He'll find Isaac's information. Remember? He isolated it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all connected. So he got the information. That's how they found out where it was. And obviously then they had to, like, get into the sea.
Yeah. So they head down.
They were all in the podcast.
They were
in the pod.
Yeah.
They're all in our podcast.
So they headed down under the sea, and they're going, they're going, oh, I don't know how much more pressure this can take, and everything's starting to shake, and it's like, oh, and then they got a signal, and they're like, getting a signal from the ship. Very low level, power supply, but there's something. The ship's still active, so they're able to activate the bay doors so they can get in, and they got in just in time, just before the pressure really sort of came crushing down on the pod.
Yeah.
So they get inside the ship, and they're like, it's weird that there's some supply of power going on here. So they're like looking around, and they're like, maybe somebody's still here. Then Ed got attacked. They get to the bridge. Somebody came out of nowhere and knocked him down, and it was Bortus.
Yay!
And then it was
but then
really
it's sad.
Sad, yeah.
Because he said Clyden and Toba had left, but Mocklus was destroyed. So it's like more likely if they did get away, they didn't survive. And, and then they said Ed has to captain the Orville. It's like, what?
But it has to be
me,
you.
captain the Orville. I've never done this in my life. Yes, you have. Just remember, you've done it before.
So then they escape from the ocean, but unfortunately, going through the stuff, because they had to do the stuff with accessing the memory bank, so that because obviously the Kalon have like a shared network of memory. John Lamar was able to access the memory banks of Isaac for the time travel stuff, but it also gave away where they were to the Kalon.
Self-signal, didn't it?
Yeah. So the Kalon are coming for them, and it's like, oh, and then, like I said, again, special effects. It's just like all these Kalon ships, and they're parallel to Star Trek, that they need to do some time travel stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you've got all the enemy closing in around them, and can they do it before they get destroyed,
Can they
and all
get
of this
there?
kind of stuff. So it was
And then
very
it didn't
much,
look like they did it.
yeah,
Because it just went, Doc's gone back in time to redo the memory. Holy crap, the ship's blown up.
yep, the ship got blown to smithereens.
But then they showed all this sort of slow
And there's
Then
Bruce
she
again.
woke
See,
up.
we're talking about the Orville. That's why Bruce has appeared.
He's singing the song.
Yeah, you're talking about the Orville. I love that program.
But then it worked. Whatever they did worked.
Yes.
But it was so like, what? The ship's blowing up. No.
So then we get to see the young Kelly, waking up in her bed, and she gets up, and she's like, wandering around and stuff, and then Claire appears.
Yeah, Claire appears.
Claire appears, and she basically speaks to young Kelly and explains what happened, and she's like, because obviously it's the Kelly that kept her memory, she knows who she is, and she's like, look, it didn't work, we have to fix things, and all this lot to do with the timeline, so she's like, we have to undo the mistakes, because otherwise everything turns out badly. So she gets young Kelly to agree to this procedure. She puts the little headband thing on her again to wipe her mind. She gives her the new injection and puts her back to sleep, and then she disappears. Kelly wakes up and she looks a bit confused for a minute, and she gets up and she hears her phone ringing. She goes into the living room area and she answers, and it's Ed. And he's like, I had a really great time last night. I really enjoyed going out. I was just wondering whether, if it's not a bit more presumptuous of me, maybe you might fancy going on a second date? And she pauses, and she stands there and she looks, and you're like, oh, you're on the edge of your seat. And then she's like, sure, I'd really like that. And then the episode ends, and you're like, yay, they did it!
But also, you must admit, it was all about special effects.
Yeah.
Earlier on when I was on about the ice moon,
Yeah.
that was exciting as well. Because remember, they went in and out and in and out, and then they got to the other end. He said, trust me. And he said, turn around.
Yeah.
And the Kalon was coming towards him.
Yeah, and he
but even that
special
special effects was so exciting.
Yep, it was. It was really, really
that
good.
Was like,
but it was
what's going on in this program?
It was just such a great episode. It was cool the way that, you had these, because you had almost the beginnings of this going back to that episode with the mobile phone and the girl from the past and everything.
Yeah.
Which was almost like the lead-in to a point of all of this. And then you had obviously the time travel thing with Kelly, and then this final episode in the parallel timeline. And the fact that, they had the Jeopardy right up until the very end. And then you even had that moment where she's paused and you're like thinking, oh no, it hasn't worked again. But then it's like, it did work, hooray! So everything goes back to normal. Everything in the future has been changed back to the way it should have been. And we're back with our status quo of our team and our ship and everything like that, ready to go into season 3.
Yeah, but like we've been saying all through all the podcasts, it starts off really sort of like jokified and sort of humorous. But I said halfway through one of our podcasts, I said, but it's going to lead to something amazing at the end.
Yeah.
And it always does. It never lets us down.
No.
Never lets us down.
It was fantastic.
So it's like, I'm so exhausted. But that's what I kept saying to you. Have you watched it yet?
Yeah.
Have you watched it yet? Because you was all about special effects going, you always find the Star Trek is special effects. I go, you need to watch the final episode of Orville, because I knew once you watched that, after what you'd said, I thought you were going to go, yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, it's so good.
Yeah,
so good. I'm going to miss it. Oh, wait a long time now for that one to come back. But
yeah.
Be worth the wait.
It will be worth the wait, definitely. And like after the success, I mean, the first season was good. The second season just upped everything, upped the ante of everything.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what they're going to pull out of the bag, because that he's just going to go bigger and better again. He's going to go, right, we need to top season 2, because season 2 was so well received and it was so exciting and so loved by the fans and the critics.
But also, for all we know, obviously, you've been on Twitter and stuff. You don't know whether other people are saying what we're saying to him, going, that is so clever how you doing it. It's almost like parallel with that program.
Yeah.
But you do it sort of so differently. And, so the feedbacks, if they're getting good feedback, obviously that's why people renew it.
Yeah.
For them to do it again. So there's obviously other people out there that think like we think. For it to, be so successful.
Yeah.
It's like, yay. But yeah, whew.
There we go, guys. We are now fully up to date with everything. So
Yes.
this podcast will be up ASAP, and then we will be recording again on Friday, which will mean that you'll have your regular scheduled programming on Sunday with the podcast, and then going forward it will be every Sunday that it will be on, because we have the technology now, we have the means to record properly without any issues. So we will be giving you this, and we'll be having a bit of a roster shift up going forward, because this Sunday Cummings podcast will feature the endings of the Arrowverse shows mostly. We'll have a holdover on Supergirl and Legends, but we'll have the endings of Arrow and Flash. But we will bring, because we've got no Walking Dead, no Star Trek, and no Orville, we will be bringing some new programs into the rotation. So we'll be discussing the return of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and also the return of everybody's favourite horny little devil, Lucifer.
Yay!
So,
and then after that, we'll be getting Fear the Walking Dead added into the mix.
Yes, we will.
And who knows what else will pop up?
Yep. Well, I know we've got the David Tennant and what's his name? I always forget his name again now. English actor. Oh, I've forgotten his name.
I don't know. You know all that name.
Michael Sheen. Michael Sheen.
Oh, Michael Sheen. Oh, yeah, that thing you told me about.
Yes. The Terry Pratchett, Terry Gilliam. No, so not Terry Gilliam. Sorry, Neil Gaiman. Good Omens miniseries, which will be coming up soonish. I think it's going to be maybe at the end of this month or something. So we'll have that to add in to talk about too.
Well.
So although some of the programs are ending, we have got replacements coming in to fill them.
And we know there's some more coming on at the end of the year, so we've always got something to talk about.
Yes.
Pretty much.
So yeah, I've really enjoyed this. I'm glad we're back.
Me too. Yeah. It's been
now
good.
I've got to put it all together and get it online as soon as possible.
Good luck with that.
I just once again say thank you to everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. And please carry on supporting the channel. You know, I want to get this to bigger and bigger heights. 112 subscribers. You know, let's try and get it higher. We can do bigger and better things. So leave a subscription if you haven't subscribed already. Leave a like on this video so that we know that you enjoyed it. Leave a comment. We'd love to converse with you guys and get your thoughts on these things. Also go in my description box so that you can get the link to my Twitter, so you can come and follow me and chat to me on there. I'm quite active on Twitter. And also, you want to help support the channel in general and support this podcast and things, so we can get better equipment and we can do more exciting things, then I have Ko-fi and I have Patreon. You can donate what you want. There are tiers, there are goals, there are rewards. You know, I'm going to be looking more into the rewards the more people that donate. So if you can't, you can't. I completely understand. But if you do, I'll be very grateful. And yeah, join us again for the next podcast. So I would like to say thank you very much to you, my co-host.
Yeah, it was good fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so until...
Finally! 2 months later!
Until next time, Mother. You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye-bye.